Okay. And we are. It never tells me. So, yeah, we're live. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic Podcast. I'm really excited to have my guest today. Today, I have with me the amazing Karen Macdonald. Karen has been a longtime guest on my show, and she's also been on, shows like Carrie Cassie, Project Camelot, and other shows for a long time. I wrote a little blurb, but I wrote tonight. I'm joined by quantum nurse, alternative health practitioner, and researcher in Klanmother, Karen Macdonald, for a deep, important conversation. We'll be diving into how biofeedback can be used to identify and release trauma, the body's response as a stress conditioning, psychological operations, long-term energetic impact of collective trauma, the Epstein and human trafficking scandal, and the shadow event and the effect of that, how manipulation narratives affect the nervous system, how we can use biofeedback to reclaim, our health. And Karen brings a unique perspective that bridges energetic medicine, psychological pattern recognition, and spiritual sovereignty. This conversation explores how trauma is not just personal, but can be engineered, amplified, and embedded into the collective consciousness. If you're interested in trauma healing, media, psychology, sovereignty, understanding how stress programming affects the body and spirit, this episode is for you. And with all that said, I'd like to give her a big warm welcome back to the show. Karen, thanks so much for coming back on. How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty excited. I'm recouping. I've had a little trauma myself here. So we'll talk a little bit about triage and trauma. And again, people getting spiked. This is actually, a byproduct of that. So, and yeah, there's been a lot. I'm in the process of moving. We've got way too much 5G here, and I've got a change coming up too. So we're looking for relocation stuff on, in the area, which is kind of cool. And we've had some really amazing talks this week. So I actually was on Carrie Cassidy. So I was just on Project Camelot. It was like mind blowing. So I've been spending the last 4 days since we were on Project Camelot is basically dealing with all the different people, just returning emails, returning Facebook. I had probably 200 people get a hold of my Facebook. I have been getting on Twitter. I've been taking emails. I spent actually almost all of today just doing sessions app. I think I've been in the chair since 10 o'clock this morning. So it's busy. Like people are starting to finally, I think, catch on. They've had enough exposure to what we've been saying. And we'll talk a little about the children, the trafficking, all that sort of stuff. So it's just wherever you want to go, I'm open to it. I'm just like on fire this week. So yeah, if you haven't seen my Project Camelot one, I encourage people to take a look at that. It was really amazing. I brought on former medical doctor, MD, is basically Dr. Deborah Drake. And she's been in the biofeedback industry almost as long as I have been. And so it was great to have her on. I had her started off. I had her get a couple PowerPoints so that we could show people what it's doing. And it's phenomenal. So I'm going to drop that link in for you guys, because if you haven't seen it, it is absolutely fantastic. So I encourage people to take a look at it, because a lot of people, like I said, they just do not realize what we're doing. We're not just playing with computers and, tuning forks and this type of thing. It's actually really high tech medicine. So anyway, how have you been? How's it going for you on your end?
Good. No, good, pretty good. I mean, it's been crazy with the release of the Epstein files. I think it was something that we all kind of knew, and and now we're dealing with the after effects of it. Or I guess I think it's more on the collective, because I think everything that we've been saying for all these years is now coming to fruit. You know what I mean? It's like showing that like the conspiracy people were right. And yeah, I think a lot of the normies still want to accept it, that this is the going on. This is the world we live in, but it seems to be what we're dealing with,
Absolutely. And, that's maybe a great launching pad, just where you kind of started with that. So when I first got into holistics, right, it had to do with actually disclosures that my children made to me. And my ex, who was a lawyer, one of the controllers in Saskatoon, and one of the dirty, really not only in family law, but in criminal law. And so my children started making disclosures about what they were seeing when I wasn't present. And It was not pretty. So this was actually part of that trafficking that we see. And it could be sexual, it could be ritual, it could be, as you know, the CIA's got, like, I think I've got up to 137 projects that I look at for people, from Artichoke to MK Ultra to the Wide Area Body Network that Sabrina Wallace talks about, and her being an N2, where they've got these neurological implants and chips that they've been manipulating people for like 50 years. It's not new. So in here, we just had an incredible, to me, it's more, what they're doing and how they're even timing and releasing it. In this area here, what people know as British Columbia, we just had a phenomenal, massive incident happen. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. So Tumbler Ridge is north of Prince George by what we call the Peace River kind of area up there, Dawson Creek, which is ironic. The Dawson Creek actor just passed away as well, supposedly of colorectal cancer and stuff like that this week. A lot of these we know are injection related. But one of the things in here is that we had actually a young biological male that his mom, who had estranged him a little bit from his father, but anyway, allowed him to start going into antipsychotics, depressants, and different things like, and again, they're giving people generic, names, so they think, oh, it's acetaminophen. They don't think of what it is. But in this case, it was actually Zoloft, which is a heavy duty, not only antidepressant and stuff, but had them on massive amounts. You combine that with hormone blockers, right, and gender bender type of drugs. And then if these people took injections and everything else over the last 6 years, that this young man went in, shot his mother, his stepbrother, and then he went into the local high school and he allegedly killed a whole bunch of people, turned the gun on himself. And we still had 2 children that were flown out to Vancouver that are in critical care in Vancouver. So these are these kind of psychological operations that we know what the problem is, what the root cause, and this is still allowing to happen. So this is bringing a whole bunch. And the next day we had another thing that happened to do with a transgender male. And, there's a lot of things that we're seeing that are happening with these SOGIs and different things. And this gets into another form of trafficking, not that different than what Epstein was trying to do, right? This is about getting their genetics in. This is about, going into the eugenics program. This is selection, election, and rejection. And so this becomes, I think, a bigger thing that we need to look at, right? And I think part of it now is, where are we putting the focus? A lot of us have I've known about Epstein for like years, but up here, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, we've got, again, Peter Nygard. I mean, he's been known to be doing that. And Nexum, which they were actually taking women into these cults and branding them with their trafficking brands on them. So they were actually just ID'd like tattoos, but they actually branded these women and would burn things into them over 45 minutes because they considered it to be a rite of passage. So where do we go from that? A lot of what I started doing was actually getting into biofeedback, because we could use it as a tool to look not only at the biofield, but to actually do psychological, emotional, and mental profiling. So a lot of people think we're all just doing it physically, but we sure are not just on that limited amount of things. So there becomes a way of doing things for trauma. And so, I'm interested in what you thought about what came out, and maybe we'll just touch a little bit from your point of view, what you thought about the whole Epstein thing. And are you aware about this massive shootout that happened in Canada in Upper British Columbia?
Yeah, I heard about the shootout. A lot of people were covering it. It seems like like you said, the kids seem to be medicated. It's weird. It almost seems to me like they use these people as like Manchurian candidates in a way. Like they program them somehow to do these like mass, shootings. That's kind of how I feel on that. And then on the Epstein thing, I'm just kind of like, the more and more that I heard, the more it was like hard to believe. But like, then I said to myself, wait, this isn't hard to believe. This has been going on for a long time, and we know this is happening. And it's just scary, the more that came out. And I have a feeling more is going to come out, because I don't think Epstein was the only one. I have a feeling he was just like kind of low fruit on the tree or something, or maybe he was bigger. I don't know, but I know there's more Epsteins in the world for sure, right?
I mean, really, when we look at, absolutely, this has been going on, as they say, even, biblically, right? Like, I mean, this has been going on for multi-generations. We can go from Cain and Abel and go all the way back. And then I'm sure we could go into the ET races even before that, and the star seeds, that some should be here and some shouldn't, right? So there's a lot of different things that can factor into that. But when we get down to the crisis to it, is that people, I think, for the most part, do not feel loved. But there's also, and I remember a friend of mine, David Wolf, would be saying, this is actually parasitical. This is not only parasitical in nature, but these people, beings, and creatures are full of parasites, and parasites can invade reptilians too. People seem to forget that. I've seen some pretty wild stuff where you actually can get some neurological parasites that get eat right through the entire body, and they're still moving like these little ants and little, beetles, but their organs, because they've attached to the central and peripheral nervous system. So they're still walking and talking. And once that host is done, they jump to another one. So it kind of reminded me of that. When you start looking at really what the biofield is, when you get into the central and peripheral nervous system, right? Central, non-autonomic. And this is where a lot of these things attach to. That's also where a lot of the, I'll just say, injections that have been going on for years, whether you took them in childhood or in the last couple of years, we know that a lot of them have stored the entire life in the basal ganglion in the nerves of the back, and then can present, is this cancer? Is this diabetes? Is this whatever it might be? But the psychological trauma that we're seeing is people are forgetting the very basics to it, that I think a lot of our ancestors knew, to actually be cleaning and deworming, like, every season change, like every 3 months they went through a 3-day or a week cleansing. So, I mean, they basically did about a month out of the year. And I think that's something that's really huge. And I don't know if you know this, but there's something, have you ever heard about toxoplasmosis? Have you ever heard about toxoplasmosis?
Yeah, I've heard that. What is that exactly?
Well, I'm going to screen share here for a little bit. I'm in the mood right now. I'm going to screen share a lot on here. So I'm just going to let me know, and hopefully you can see the whole thing here in a sec. But when we go into something called Toxoplasmosis gondii, right? This is actually, it is a parasite. It goes from host to host. It goes through different environments. And this little critter was actually quite known to women. Women that were always pregnant, we were always taught, never, never, never touch any cat litter. But it's in a lot of other things. It's in cows, it's in everything. But this little gondii spreads right around here, and it's got a little life cycle. And there's been a lot of studies. I was actually telling Dr. Drake this because she wasn't aware about it. But toxoplasmosis has been seen and been documented, as well as some other different parasites and funguses and candida, with the heavy metals in what you call the geoengineering chemtrails. Now, why are they spraying all this Toxoplasmosis gondii? Because you know what I call it? It's the gender bender worm. Okay? People, I call it the gay worm. Okay? So a lot of people were not aware that this could get into the brain tissue, right? Severely, and start taking the host over and start doing what it wants to do. So a lot of these have their own sexual and asexual and different kinds of reproduction. And what starts happening when you assimilate with these different bugs? This was actually what I looked for. And I found a lot of it in different people that were trying to go transgender or thinking that they were becoming gay, because it is not concurrent. It does not sit in proximity with an individual. When you are made by the creator, they don't make mistakes. The creator didn't make a mistake how you were built. They really don't. That's you, and when we think we can alter it and improve it, basically what we have is when they're transgendering is they're basically surgically mutilating it. And when you're surgically mutilating everyone, what they're doing is kind of like, it's almost like a slower form of MAID. They are actually stopping your natural production, your natural hormones, all of that sort of thing. So there's a whole psychological thing that these children are being put on right now that's absolutely insane. But a lot of them that I actually talked to, and a lot of people that thought whether they're going lesbian or homosexual or whatever it was, a lot of them I talked to were actually usually had a lot of cats growing up. And so we have forgotten, I think, as a people, that we need to go in. There's a reason why our great-grandparents and our great-great-grandparents were all deworming, getting the wormwood. What was it called? Wormwood. We call it Artemisia. I think it's the art of the covenant should be that, Noah's Ark and stuff like that should be art, or Tartarian. Maybe all the Tartarians and the Arctarians were actually doing this. Who knows? Anyway, this is something that people really need to take into consideration, because these different parasites and protozoas can actually alter that. And so when you start combining some of this, I was just absolutely blown, because I've been making remedies for some of my clients, right? And I had some young teenagers in here, and they said, well, I think we're going gay. And I said, well, why don't we do this? And 3-4 days later, they said, I think it's making me less gay. And I said, well, maybe the parasite part is working, right? We forget how these things can get in as a host. And a host, to me, like a parasite, that would be an illegal alien. That would be like literally it's an alien in you, taking you over, assimilating you in another form, if that makes sense. So anyway, these are being sprayed prolifically all over our heads every day, right? So it's getting in the food, it's getting in the water as well, it's getting into the cattle, and then you uptake some of this as well. So, I mean, one of these things that we're seeing, and the other one, which is also quite common, is something called atrazine. And of course, atrazine is a nice little chemical that they like to put in everywhere. These things are known as in our thing, gender benders, or why women are getting breast cancer or men are getting prostate cancer or things like this on that. So this is something as well, like how clean is someone's diet? When you go back and you start seeing this atrazine is a herbicide that was put in almost most of the Western world here. It's one of the most commonly applied pesticides out there. And it literally is so bad, Rob, that this screws up the sex lives of adult male frogs. It was emasculating different ones in here as an endocrine disruptor. And then it feminizes the males. And they were getting to the point that we're almost starting to fertilize. But talking about gender bender things, right? These are what the lesbian, gay communities and trans and queer communities, a lot of them are on these potent kind of things, because they don't realize that these weed killers were literally getting male frogs to lay eggs up here. And that was actually given and talked about at the CBC and Health Canada guideline for water, And so these whole things, like these different drugs out here, and companies like Syngenta actually looked at this herbicide because it was actually wrecking the entire, community and the livestock and everything. And yet what happens? They still allow this. So these are in these communities. So I'll just quickly screen share this too here, just so people can see what I'm talking about with atrazine, because atrazine's out there. I mean, people are talking about this.
This is the one where Alex Jones talked about that was making the frogs gay, right?
Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's in almost everything. It's in the water. It's in the herbicides. Like I said, go out into half of Saskatchewan, Montana, whatever, Florida, wherever they're doing your crops, right? They're growing wheat. They're growing barley. They're growing peas. They're growing corn, right? What's on here? People need to start reading the bloody labels, right? This is not a joke. And so when I started getting into, what was going on with this shooting, I went, well, there's one possibility. It's not the only one. So what do you think of that? Isn't that mind-blowing?
It really is. It really is. And it makes me think that wow, I don't even know where to go with that. That is, I mean, wow. What do you think? It's all the chemicals? Do you think that it's causing people to And do you think it's there's like a major like a movement behind it? Like, do you think they're trying to get people to become like trans, or they want to steer the population that way? Do you think?
Oh, you know what? That's such a loaded question, isn't it? And the answer to that would be yes, yes, and yes. How about that? You know, one of the things in here, I spent with Andrew Mallet a lot of time at something called Project Ascension. And actually, I was just talking. One of my clients I just did this morning from New York had seen me since Project Ascension days. I went, wow, you're back to like 2015, 2016. That's like pretty wild. And he goes, I've been following you, Karen, for 10 years, but I just decided I needed to talk to you. Like talk, and I want you to do this stuff. And he says, I don't know what the hell I've delayed it for. I said, why does everyone have to wait to the last stage here? And I'll just screen share if I can again with some of this here. I'm going to just show people where they go into. I mean, like I said, I've been talking about this for bloody ever, but you know, I think at least people are starting to want to start, you know, taking notice of what's going on, right? I mean, it shouldn't have to take this kind of entirety of what happened up in this thing. So up here, we started talking actually about genetics and stuff here. I had one in here. It's called number 12, genetics, taking a look at who we are, what we're doing. I mean, enemas, colonics, I mean, all sorts of stuff, cleaning. I was talking about essential oils back then. I was talking about the pole shift back then, you know, the cordial mass ejections, the Carrington vent, all these sort of things. The old days in here, I started doing rice scalar skill, and now I do the genus. I just find it's much faster, easier, and it's way cheaper, and anyone can access it now for, you know, $50 for a couple hundred, you know, for a couple months or something. But anyway, these things have been out there. And you know what? I was looking for atrazine back then. Can you believe it? Since 2004, I've been looking for atrazine and glyphosate and all those things because it's affecting the hormones, right? And then I would check your hormones, and sure enough. So a lot of these things in here, like, you know, when we're talking about, you know, the galactic councils and the blue kachina and the looking glass technology, this is where I really did a jump into a lot of this back then. So that was something that, like, you know, people need to look at. I think right now we've come to the point, and a lot of us have known about the child trafficking forever. And there was this show, it was called actually Satanic Panic. And it was about some of the Canadian pedophile rings as well, alleged up in Martinsville by Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, that was discovered by actually Claudia Bryden, that was a former RCMP officer. And there was a whole bunch of them that there were some amazingly great officers in there. And this Satanic Panic was actually about a child pedophile ring, entire basically daycare centers. And so I've been around this since the 1990s, even as a nurse. I remember one of the first things as a student nurse in emergency was looking after children that had come in that had been rectally damaged. You know, we see a lot of that. It's getting more and more profound. And I know in some of the centers, like in Alberta and the bigger cities, right, we are seeing children that are coming in that need to be surgically put back together in their reproductive parts. Okay, so these attacks on children.
I got a question. I think David Icke explained this on when I was listening to Redacted the other day, but like, I want to ask you, like, what your opinion is. Why do you think the Satanists and the pedophiles want the children? Like, is it the innocence? Do they get something out of that energy? Is it like, do they draw from the energy of the innocence?
I think that's part of it. That's a great question. So when you get into the background of sexual abuse and ritual abuse, which we call SARA, and I create similar remedies like what Young Living has, which is actually called SARA for sexual abuse, ritual abuse. There are essential oils and stuff that we use because it comes into one emotional and it comes into the mental aspects of it. Like, why are they doing it? You know, what do they gain? We could talk about harvesting the biofield, which Sabrina Wallace talks a lot about, right? When you get in there and they are attacking the biofield, they're attacking that. It's an organ system, no different than your lungs and your brain, is that nervous system or the wave system, which is really, you know, part of that nervous wave, right? You know, we're electrical beings, and you have an entire thing, whether we call it loose harvesting, there's certainly, going after that, there is a high that's up there. But why do you get the negative? Right. And back to a lot of this parasitical stuff, a lot of these alien worms and stuff like that are foreign material. Even if you put graphene into someone, right, it creates a foreign substance into you, which is going to create a mental and emotional problem. And if we can see these hormones and herbicides and things being dumped regularly, which is totally taking you out of your natural environment, it also takes what your mind does. It turns you from literally from love to hate. Now, part of the things that I do as well, and this gets into, that's a great question, Rob, because now I'm just on another stream here. What it does is you're looking at the emotional part, like a releasing emotional patterns. And these can be learned. They can also be somewhat inherent and passed down. It's kind of the nature nurture. But when you go into what I do a lot, and I was trained by Richard Bartlett in Matrix Energetic, which is the mind part. But when you look at the actual, how do we change the chemistry of someone? Dr. Carolyn Mean made an incredible book, and that book was called Releasing Emotional Patterns with Essential Oils, because what happens is that you actually have a charge on the cell, if you would. And so what we would do is we would find out or identify, almost like with the genius, what we do is we go in and we look for the meridian or the blockage. And if you've got, let's say, liver issues, you might be have a tendency in traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic or Russian medicine to have more anger, right? So there is that, and there's a gray area in between, but obviously, polarity. So a lot of people have got abuse. They have all sorts of things that they could be dealing with. And that's where we get into how do we change it? And really part of it comes down to the polarity inside the individual. Most of these people are hyperacidic. They do not think straight. So hyperacidity, just if you've got dirty oil in you, like a car, right? And you're not cleaning out the fluids or not detoxing and cleaning, that is going to affect you from head to toe. And that acidity alone will take you from depression to a state of bliss. And we know that. So there's a whole point to why I push on, maybe you need some baking soda, bicarb water, and lemon, once or twice a day. And maybe you need to do some of these essential oils that cross the blood-brain barrier, like frankincense and cedarwood and sandalwood and myrrh and spruce, fir, and pine. But lemon, lime, and orange, a lot of these work better than cannabis do, right? So I think a lot of it, like what you're saying, is there's a physiological biochemical part, but then there's an emotional part. And when you get into the quantum part of it, right? And there are people and beings that, as you know, from walk-ins to cloning to neuroimplants that take over people, that they actually have got Manchurian candidates, like what you call sleeper cells, right? They can activate, they could have done this to people as a child with the trauma and then gone to activate them now at certain times. All it takes is a phone call, a sequence, anything can trigger people, right? Just like you have people that have been abused and watching something will re-trigger them again, right? So there are certain species or combinations, like I said, but I think when we look at the epigenetics, that's where I'm looking at it, is we have the ability to start cleaning everything, definitely in there. I think we've all known every emotion, almost under the sun. We all know what it's like to feel alone. I think all of us have all tapped on some form of addiction, chemical, smoking, alcohol, sex, sugar, whatever it might be, porn. I mean, that's where you get into this, bringing in, why do people do what they do? And I think it's been the disintegration of the mothers. It has been the destruction of the tribes and the clans, what people call family, the nuclear family. This is where it stems. And if you don't have strong women and strong men in there, like divine masculine, divine feminine, whatever you want to say, but if you can't show what health is, that child is like the Trinity, right? Whether we have the Trinity inside us, the male, the female, the integration, the mother, the child, the creator. If we can't co-create and have peace, How are we going to give it to our children? And right now we're into so many generations of, on the verge of extinction. And right now, when I look at what's happened with the injections, we have lost more people in injections just about than we've had in all the World War wars combined. So in the last 6 years, we've almost lost more people than we've lost in combined the last 100 and some years. So this is,
Wow.
I mean, should be more than upsetting to people. We should be upset that up in Canada, not that I recognize borders, because we don't. We never had a Canada. We never had a States. We never had a republic. We never had 1776. We had tribal peoples living here in peace with peace treaties before some of the other invaders came in and greed came in. And we need to go back to that. We had men and women councils. We had clanmothers. We had basically, as you call chiefs, those are clan fathers. We had those available, right? We had our tribal leaders. We lived according to the land, and we had respect for the land. We had respect for our parents. We had respect for the education, and we've come away from that. And that's what I've seen is the slow erosion of people and what we've done to ourselves and allowed to have done. And this is where, people, what Jeffrey Epstein did or didn't do, or Ghislaine did or didn't do, or Bondi's now. Now they're showing pictures of Bondi with Trump and everyone else and Epstein. And these are their own untoward, groups, right? They've got their own problems. They need to go sort it out instead of dragging all the rest of us into it. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? What is the audience thoughts on this? I'm quite curious.
I absolutely agree. It's like, how do we get back to this? Like you said, going back to the tribes and clans, and I would absolutely agree that we need to maybe tear the whole system down and rebuild it. I think that's the only thing to do at this point. But it's like, do we tear the whole system down? Someone made a good point the other day. They're like, if you tear it down, you got to have something to replace it with. We got to. And what do we, but I think we do need to do that, because it seems like the whole system is kind of corrupt, right?
Oh, absolutely. In there, but we already had a system. It's been existing. It's always been here. We literally just have to have a remembrance and come back to it. A lot of us do know what those laws are. A lot of us do live in accordance to, as you want to think, in harmony with the earth, or, natural law, however you want to look at it, off the grid, whatever. We know basically how to do it. I think the thing is, what's the impetus? What's the excitement? What's going to be the, carrot in front of people to actually go do it? That's one of the reasons why I can't live in a city. One is physically, I can't take the extra 5G. Remember, with 6G, it's inside just about all of us. And I can't be in that presence. Even this is getting too much with 4 towers in here, let alone if I was in a city with 200 or 2,000. But in here, we have to be able to keep ourselves grounded and intact. And we can't just talk about it and throw a bunch of crystals and think it's going to happen. We need to be in those environments that are conducive to our own health, and then kind of Field of Dreams, build it and create it, they will come. I think is where we got to start. And that was the reason I came out to this area in this part of the Kootenays. Was one, it was a safe zone. 2, it's one of the best fertile growing zones. We have spring water and everything else. So those are some of the different things that, are helpful, going to plant your seeds, going to sprout. I'm looking at actually taking this tiny house basically home off grid. Right. I've already got solar planners in case of an emergency or for the camper. But I'm like, you know what? Do I really need the BC Hydro? Hell no. I can go get some solar panels for under $600 and put this on there. I go to many places. Do you know what? They still have latrines out here. Can you imagine an outhouse? Right. That's a foreign concept. Out here, you could get an incinerating toilet still in your house. You can do a composting toilet still in your house. People haven't made those even little baby steps, right? Or done some sprouting, or, I've done several shows, and with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. I appreciate the wisdom in where he's at right now. His wisdom after 81 years of being with the Navy SEALs and Navy intelligence and having a GS-16 clearance and talking to ETs and krills and whatever it might be, and being the, inspiration behind the X-Files. But after 81 years, you know what he tells me? You guys need to be going back and growing your own food, at least 40% of it. You need to get off the grid, get back to nature. And with whether the pole shift is coming or not coming, or we just had a little bit of an excitement off the Cascadia volcanoes underground, which he told me, it doesn't matter. CMEs, Atlas, whatever. We need to get right with ourselves and get right with the planet. And I think, and then it would happen, right? Because there are groups of communities. There's lots of groups like the Anastasia Ringing Cedars of Russia. There are eco villages all over the place. You just have to Google how many people have Googled eco villages, right? I mean, you could go to, where are you, Pennsylvania or whatever. How about we Google eco villages out there and look at moving. Instead of thinking a big step, how about we take that one step and go, where are the eco villages and the people? Where are my people? Where are my, planetary tribes here? Maybe that's the first step. I know where mine are. I don't know if people do, but I think that's one of them. I think with a lot of stuff coming in, like especially to not only pole shift, but Atlas. And of course, Atlas has been playing up in the news again the last 2 days, right? We've got the signals coming in, the WOW signals going in, stuff happened at Jupiter. I laughed. I said they're probably doing something with maybe, up at Ganymede and the Jupiter command, who knows? But they're coming back in, and there's some different strange occurrences going on. And so one of these things, like I said, a lot of people need to take a look at what's going on, because even you look at the AI coming in, you look at platforms like Discord right now, they're going to want total digital ID and identification. We're doing it.
That. Yeah, I saw that. That scared me. Yeah, like I was with my friend Mark from he was on the show with both of us before. Mark from Forever Conscious. He was saying about that he thought that Discord's gonna require all like IDs and stuff like that. I was like, man, that's scary. Why is that? Like,
again, getting into, is it control? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it whatever? Right. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going in there, but a lot of people, and in some ways, we have to be able to identify these people better. We've got clones, we've got NPCs, we've got literally people walking around here like exoskeletons. We have people that don't throw actually thermal signatures properly, like, an actual individual would with a soul. How do we identify them if we don't start using some of this technology? Because obviously what we're working up till now doesn't work. So there is a place, I think, for biometrics and some identification. Everyone on this planet, for the most part, has got a banking card. They've got birth certificates, and we can go into all the straw man stuff, but there needs to be some identification, because the way a lot of this trafficking, they got away with it. Why weren't we having Amber Alerts every 10 seconds, right? Was there actually 8 million children gone? Don't know, right? Even that, the numbers don't add up. But even saying that they did, and you've got 8,000 or 80,000 in Canada and 50,000 in the States missing every year, our phone should be ringing every second. Why are we not getting that? Because the thing too is that a lot of these are unidentified. And that became the problem, because you also had baby making factories, right? There are farms. They're like Fort Knox with genetics above and below, and mostly below. I know in Canada, we've got over 200 per province. That's over 2,000 bunkers that were known to be around that, these people could be hiding in, let alone the Tartarian cities and everything else, and sinkholes showing up these days. So I don't know. What are you thinking about this? What are your thoughts on some solutions?
I think the reason why we're not seeing, and I talked about this before, I think the reason why we're not seeing a notification for these abductions, child abductions and stuff, is because I think the whole system covers for pedophilia. You know what I mean? it's sad to say that, but it's almost like it's not the whole system. There's people like you and us that are, and there's a lot of good people in the world fighting for good too. I mean, we can't forget about that. But like, it seems like at the top, the people that are in control are all child molester. I don't want to say all of them, but yeah, a lot of them. So it seems like it's almost like protected almost. It's sick to say that, you know what I mean? But like that's what it seems like. This is why it was so hard for people to get Jeffrey Epstein arrested. Would you agree with that, or what do you think is going on?
Well, I think a lot of it, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. These are inner circles that have been infiltrating into the clans and tribes for a long time. So, I mean, right down to why they call it colonization and being civilized. You've been civilized, right? You're a civilian, right? And so through years of, this infiltration in every way, shape, or form, it's gotten into every profession, every university. We went away from having holistic nurses that told doctors what to do. By the way, it was a reverse role, right? The women were in there caring, they were putting the energy. They did energetic medicine. They were all herbologists and iridologists, and they basically all did, as you think, traditional Chinese medicine. And we've come away from that. We've got lawyer craft, priest craft, witchcraft, right? And then doctor craft, the craft. That's why they call it practicing the craft, right? And when you look at what that thing is instead of going from, the angelic women of pure light, they started going, well, witchcraft. Well, and they made that even look palatable, right? Oh, it's okay to do that. But that is actually know what the words mean, right? And then when you got into, instead of people, where you had your chieftains, right? Your clansmen, right? And tribesmen, right? Doesn't matter if you're white, black, or whatever. Every bloodline, I don't care if there's 60 of them now. Every one of our bloodlines has got a matriarch and, again, should have a head, chief for it, right? And they do. But most people don't know the law. And this is where they have slowly infiltrated everything, including we went from like helping people, which was called gifting, the law of the Gao, by the way, right? Which was way before Ubuntu, what you guys call barter. Now we went into like selling not only, gold and silver that belongs in our areas, and we would trade it. We would like free trade. No one was using this kind of stuff, let alone taking galactic DNA and like Jupiter ascending, taking and selling genetics off the planet, right? So when you go back as to how far they've infiltrated, I think more so up here maybe than where you are, is that we are seeing certain people that decided to, I don't want to participate because you're in the Amish kind of area, right? And so,
yeah, kind of, yeah.
Right? Yeah, up here we got Hutterites and we got Mennonites, which are close, but a lot of them are of German or Anglo-Saxon descent. Or up here, the Russians. I mean, most people don't know that the Russians were actually in turn like the Japanese in World War II. Did you know that? In Canada,
no, I didn't know that.
I'm in New Denver. This very village was built after, and they interned. Well, first of all, they had tribes here called the Sinaiaks. This is Sinaiak territory. Cree, Bloodfoot, Apache, wherever, Choctaw. I'm dealing with them right now. Chief Maiko is now a Klanmother, by the way. She's moving towards it. So a lot of these actually, the women are moving into clan positions. They're sick of the bands and the reserves and these paid off chiefs. But in this village here, when the silver rush came, because this is all silver and gold in these hills, right? We got Silverton, Silver City next door. This was the gold city, right? But because all of these people came in here, foreigners and colonists and foreign men, they started infiltrating, but there became murders. They brought their Illuminati. They brought the Masonic. The Brotherhood is like just alive and thriving here. Ask anyone. The Fourth Reich is here. Ask any super soldier that they all, his children were brought here and like corrupted into the system at Q552 at Nelson, British Columbia. But when it came to World War II, they took the Russians, the Sons of Freedom, the Ukrainians, and the Doukhobors here. And they actually, the hospital and the things are still here, that you can see them in the pictures from the 50s, 40s and 50s, that these Russian children were taken away from their parents. They were put behind chain link fences. The parents were allowed to come for 2 hours every Sunday if the child behaved. This went on for years here into the 50s. And they just settled for like 20 some million because there's 2 survivors. But the thing is, a lot of people have forgotten what happened, right? And if you don't keep that oral tradition alive, this is why I think this gets back down to it, is that we don't have a lot of like wisdom keepers or knowledge keepers like myself that have actually agreed to do this. Because even as a clan mama and a white bear mama, I had to agree to do this. You're not just, born into this. You have to make it a choice to do it. Like I made it a choice when the guy said, I remember, he says, what does it feel like to have been on the forefront of getting the queen taken down? I said, really damn good, actually, because that was the first, thing we had to go over. It was after their Klanmothers, right? They're negative witches out here too. So that when it infiltrates and you're seeing what happened to what we call residential schools, that these certain, whether it was Amish, there were certain groups or certain bloodlines, certain tribes. So really the Amish and the Hutterites and all that, they're a tribe. That's what they are. They're a tribe. And so when these tribes decided we're not participating, now came the force, right? And then this is what we saw, especially up here, residential schools. So I don't know if people are really that aware of it down the States, but especially more so because you guys kind of more assimilated. We got Cabbage Patch children and we got Tartarian stuff, and they kind of just reset there. Here, because it was a little bit more the last frontier, and we have a lot of stuff. Like, we've got different reserves, slightly different than what you have down there. But nonetheless, they took these people, stripped them away, and for the most part infiltrated, and then put their own partners that they went into crime with in charge of it's like the fox in charge of the hen house. So they put these fake lineages and non-hereditary Aboriginal natives in charge of these reserves. And ask anyone that's usually on there, they get nothing but the, certain bloodlines. Again, they kept it within the bloodline being co-opted. And these residential schools, we have a huge one. My mom, I showed up by special appearance January 19th, 1964. And that's important because the Queen allegedly came in 1964 and scooped up some children for a royal hunting party out at Dead Man's Lake, not in Kamloops, but outside of it. And allegedly they disappeared. But right now, people's brains are so twisted within there that there's saying that, people said there was 250 bodies because someone went over there with a Geiger counter, forgetting that, the earth is just, it only does surface stuff and you would never tell. But they've never done genetic studies and they've never done deep earth penetrating LIDAR, which they have. And they certainly didn't take the $12 million and dig up one little square, right? That there's no 215 bodies have been produced. And yet in the First Nations, this is what they use to pit the First Nations against other tribes. And I'm just as tribal as they are. And a lot of people forget that, is that we're all come from a tribe. And we need to go back to the core element of who we are with the Creator and get right with ourselves and our environment. I don't know. What do you think about that? When it comes down to that infiltration rate down to that level?
Well, it seems like we're seeing infiltration, everywhere. And, I guess it's like, how do we, combat that? I guess in a way we need to, band together more as communities, maybe, and to have a stronger force against, people that are trying to, intrude in like our communities and stuff like that. Would you think, or?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a great start. I'm just going to screen share something here for a second again, too. Sure. This is actually my YouTube channel here. And you can see I just actually redid my thing from Carrie Cassidy and a couple days ago. It's really brilliant. I really would suggest highly because I got into this thing and we were winding down. I'm like, no, I'm not done. I want to talk about children. I want to talk about trafficking. I want to talk about Atlas. I want to get this off my chest, right? But part of it in here, I talk a lot because I have a frequency Fridays myself. And usually Fridays in the evening, I will do this from 5 to 6 or 7. And I'm actually was going to do one this evening, but I'm glad I get to spend the time with you. So in here, part of it is like speaking to the water. How do we speak to ourselves? How do we produce this energy? And that's why I started making some of these frequency Fridays, because it's not just about, biofeedback. It's about everything. Like, is it 6G? Is it what's going on with the pulse shift? That sort of thing. But one of the things is under my playlist, and I just want to bring it to people's attention. Again, I appreciate that comment in the audience where someone says, we don't even know our own history. You don't. And that's why there's, so many that are a few of us that saying, listen, this public thing is bullshit. The military law is bullshit. The gay, lesbian, whatever, those aren't real rights. Those are when they give people privileges or allow them to do stuff. Doesn't mean it's the law, because it is not the law, what they're doing. I've done stuff on healing here, but I want to bring you in. There's some stuff on healing, but I want to bring you into something I did. It's called actually Klanmother's law. It's called savage sovereignty. You can't be a sovereign unless you're a savage, and most people think it's negative. It's not. And, I would say it's not Turtle Island, but everything knowing what is this animal? Why do I not want to be part of these private member associations and paying like, Barrick and all those guys like $11,000 to get fake machines or fake membership. That's what they're doing. You're a member now. Well, how do we initiate member? This one is you have to pay money into it. All the private members and PMAs, you have to pay to get in there. That's members. That automatically is unlawful. That's why people assume that they belong to a country. You don't. You belong to a tribe or a clan, which is your nation. Your nation is bloodline derivative. So one of the things here, even when they talk about the Queen taking these missing children, whether she did or not, people say, well, she can't do that. And I've heard professors like Francis Whittleson, they're all over in the things. And you know who's attacking them? All the Native and Aboriginals and on the campus, for the most part, are coming up, and they are not listening, because we've got a question. Where are the missing children? We're not saying that children haven't been done, and this hasn't been. When you're talking that there's 250 children, then you prove it, right? You don't take money behind the back door and don't do it. And like I said, you can take DNA samples. I don't care if, you've had bones in there for 200 years or 50, you'll be able to tell. And a lot of these things in here, these people also don't realize what you and I know, that we know that there's deep underground military tunnel systems and transits and bilocating. And we also have things like, body doubles, masks, and the Queen could be actually here while they're there, right? Not that hard. We've seen enough stuff with CGI, for God's sakes. We shouldn't even be questioning it at this point. But matrilineal teaching, this is the gathering of the circle again, the mending the hoop. A lot of people don't realize these private things are memberships, UCC1, what is uniform commercial? I have actually gone through all of that to know how to tear it apart and teach people that it's not it, And so when you start going down here, the very last one is mine. And the reason I'm bringing it to you, and I'm just going to bring it because it just came to this question that someone asked in the audience, is people don't know what even the United States means and what Canada means. And I'm just going to use this as an example here. Canada is not the land above you guys. It's not the 51st state. Neither are you guys the 11th province. Okay. Canada and a lot of these corporations are defined as the navigable waters outside the landmass. In other words, where he's drawing that little line, secondary line around the continent, that's what Canada's portion is it's the 12 miles outside in the ocean off the beach. And this one actually shows you how, because you wanted to know where, this shows us where the Queen, Her Majesty, came up here and developed the Crown Corporation. And that's something I'm working on right now with some of the hereditaries, is that money that the Crown took, there was a 60-40 split is what they usually did. They never paid the 40% back to any of us. And I will say star nations, right? Not native nations, not bands, star nations, hereditaries, original bloodlines. This has been sitting there almost like NESARA, the National Economic Rights Security, the NESARA, all those funds. They haven't paid that either. They owe all of this day one to all of us. And most people, like I said, talking there, educating a little bit. What is a trust? It means to truce. It meant to intercourse. What does birth versus born mean, right? And again, all these were done way back when in original languages, and these original languages were not in English. Your American flag, and I don't care which one they use, the Republic or Betsy's, or I don't really care, all the different versions, they're Masonic Illuminati war flags, including this one. So even these people that are natives here, they come up and they say, we're allies, we're partners of the Queen. She forgot it. So we just go into court when we get into trouble and we show the little medallion, and it's like a get out of jail card from playing Monopoly. Okay, those aren't hereditaries, they're not Klanmothers, and they haven't been sent by Klanmothers, and we don't use Illuminati flags like that. Again, people don't know. So when you get into some of this, where we get people like Tim Phillips, Eagle Eye Man, you can see all of these people can be Bear Clan, and can you see we all have different colors of skin, and we're from the same blood group? Kind of amazing, right? Or in your states, but in Canada.
Well, you guys all in that picture from the same. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Karen. I was saying, in that picture, you guys were all from the same blood group then? That's pretty interesting.
You can, again, a lot of people don't realize their own blood types. And so I start teaching that symbol that you saw with the tree and everything there is actually what's called the 2-row wampum. So study that, because I just talked to someone that actually still holds that. These are the books that I have that are actually a lot of what you call the missing history. It's like Tartarian history. It talks about what clan are you, and are you in Wolf Clan, Bear Clan, like mine's AB positive, so that's the Bear Clan. These are a lot of different things that people are missing and that we're trying to bring together. And that too will wampum and stuff like that. So like I said, we need to do that. And these are actually elders I have met. These guys are in the Anishinaabe territory, but these are actually O negative. These are actually have been under, and they have told me allegedly they've been under New York, and they were cut for bleeding for the adrenochrome for years and then released. They actually have their Atlantean flag. Atlantean flags. You want to start talking about? I'm not O negative. This is actually one of the original hereditary chiefs that's O negative that was taken because he has a rare blood group, and he was used for adrenochrome harvesting and blood leaching. Okay, so like I said, a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of people over the years. That's why I said it's important to know the background, like, what is this, what was Meredith Quinn talking about? Why did a bunch of the Bear Clan from, as you think, Alberta, but why did the Cree Dene go down to the Dakota? Because they were trying to talk to their headman here, which was, and he talks actually, Meredith Quinn here, when he was talking about it, he talked how the Queen came over and they started scalping. Not only scalping, it was the blood. And the long pig, or what you call the long steak, was actually taking the original people, any tribe, they didn't care, and they would take them back to England, and that's where your adrenochrome and your organ harvesting comes back and taking the children. So a lot of people don't realize this history, and that's why I went into some of it. I'm starting to put it back together. So it's important that you know who we are, where we came from, and where we got to go again. So I think it's, California girl, hey, it's live with Karen Macdonald. Anyway, so it's right. She's very much that it gets modified and abused and, done here. But you've got people that just do not think. And I remember looking in genetics, some people do not actually have an uplink from their heart to their brain. I know it sounds weird, but they can start manipulating, like in vitro fertilization, right after the get-go. They can breed basically the love out of someone right now. And when we have these kind of people, we need to, and even with the voting thing, when you vote or do petitions and do things like that, you're right back in abdicating your rights to someone else. And that's wrong. Masons know that. They don't abdicate. They know that this is mine, this is yours. We're supposed to be like, masters, right? Masters don't submit to anyone else. And if that's the case, well, then what the hell are people doing voting these people in for? You lose your rights when you do that. That's why I could go after the Queen. When I did the show with ACIO, right? I spent time with Peter Berger like years ago. And I went, you know what? I need to get a refresh. And I got to spend in August, I spent the morning with him and Jessica and some other people. And one of the first things out of his mouth is he's looking through my thing. He goes, oh my gosh, because I had just talked to him surface before. Now I got in depth. I want to know what you know, right? And he was able to bring up my records, with he's got a above 60 clearance for cap's sake, Anyway, it's like Pine Gap. It's like they're to me like Men in Black. Like can I go help? Can I go talk to you? Can you go find out what you know about like on and off the planet? What do my records say? And he goes, oh my gosh, first thing I almost out of his mouth 3 times, he said, you are not a Canadian. I said, I've been telling that to everyone forever. Right. And again, they have their own set of slavery. So if you think you're an American, you want to give your allegiance to those flags, those are Mason flags, and you got to, it's not even vote. When people say vote for your dollar, that's absolute bullshit because they're tying you back into that agreement. You're making a contract with them and they got to quit contracting, if that makes sense. So, but one of the things
you're on fire today, Karen. You're on fire today. This is a really good talk,
Well, I'm glad, I really wanted to do it because it's, a lot of people also perceive me, oh, she's that woman with that computer thing. Well, that's absolute bullshit. I spend time in here developing stuff because we can use this stuff. Your voice is so important. Your voice, we can actually record it. And I don't have to give it to the cloud. I don't give it to AI. I just record it. And with our own internal thing, just like a tuning fork and study using like, a pendulum, which I got to take out. I unfortunately just sucked mine up into my vacuum today. That's going to be a mess. But anyway, what happened is that when we do it, your voice is recording like a natural digital computerized homeopathic. And so for everything that you have, basically what you can do is we can find the reverse imaging of it or mirroring or 0 point or whatever you want to call it. But that makes such an incredible difference here. And that you can go in and start finding out what is the herb that's for that tapeworm, but what is the sound of that herb? So I'm actually, when you go back to, and I'm not going to talk biblically because it's been so adulterated, but when you go back into a scriptural sense, our DNA is our script. It's our story. They either want to conscript you into the army or they want to prescript you and alter it. So you can't keep developing. And our script has a voice, sound, and a biofield signature, all of which we can do with that. Because even a lot of people that are intuitive or psychics, including myself, we have limited frequencies that we go into, and that's just cut because of our genetics. We don't see all dimensions. We don't, even people when they use psychedelics and stuff, they only move into different areas, and so this allows us to go by frequency, by frequency, by frequency. It allows me to go into that chakra, and then that chakra, and then that chakra, because it could be hiding there interdimensionally, cloaked out like a ship, or leaving dormant. We're now finding all the stuff that came in that with, for example, and I know Miles Johnson was mentioning it. He said, did you not realize this ivermectin is now making people sterile? Yeah, I've known that from day one. I've been screaming. But now, actually, John Kavass, who's ex-military, you might want to have him on your show. He's been with the microscope. Guess what? He's going into all the stuff that people, because ivermectin's only really been out about 2-3 years, right? He took some of the original samples out that they had stored, and they can now see 4 months to a year later. Guess what? It's becoming alive, and it's coming back and working against you. And I said, wow. We know that. That's what semi-synthetic. So it's developing how you interact with the parasites. Guess what? So now it shuts off how you deal with natural parasites. So it had its use temporarily, but now people are going to be very, very sorry on some of this stuff that they didn't read the label and want to go for the wormwood and everything else, because there were natural things that would not turn off your immune system here. And that's one of the things too, I think that's really important that people need to look at, right? Is there's a reason why, we've been screaming at that. And in here, I thought that might be something really quite excellent that, you might want to take a look at, because a lot of people, like I said, they're just so unaware of this stuff. Right. And it's unfortunate, it shouldn't have to happen. Not at this day and age, I think a lot of it is because people just don't want to take accountability. They don't want to read. They don't want to do whatever it is. We have to put some time in. And I think the fault lays in the women really need to come together, from that. And I think one of the biggest things here, I'm just going to screen share if I can for just one moment, because I think I just want to show how some of this works actually on a very simple level, hopefully. People will see. I think it's simple. I don't want to make things complicated in here. But one of the things, let's say if we're looking at the frequencies here, this is something I actually had Dr. Debbie Drake put together. So we were on Project Camelot, and I'm just going to give you a quick 3-minute synopsis for the first hour. But basically that whole voice, and I told her, I said, what we're doing is the tones of creation. If you're an original Rob, an original Karen, an original whoever, you've got an original voice frequency. When you put anything into it, synthetic or artificial or abnormal, it will create a disturbance in the force, so to speak, just like Star Wars. And so we have that original tone. And so that's something that can be done really, really quickly. And so it's all about the bioterrain. So whether we look at it, which we do, I do traditional Chinese medicine. So I'm teaching you from an Ayurvedic, Russian, and which traditional Chinese medicine came from was from Tartarian, you guys. So really the Russian medicine here, the Tartarian medicine is what we're talking about. The fluids and minerals and the pH balance are the integrity of our structure. And that then creates that biofield if each one is, functioning. And each one of your organs has got like an EEG. Can you see the little waves? They all have waves to it. And that's what I'm measuring with my machine as an ultrasound, because I use volts, amps, and resistance, not a, two thing that they use in the hospital. So this is what we're looking at here. So if they're loose harvesting us and draining us or putting things into us, we're going to see a difference in that. So everything is in, and that's the 369 that Tesla talks about. That's your trinity right there. So we are either in a state of coherence or we're in a state of non-coherence, right? Getting into illness. And we can tell by the spin with our machines, are you spinning left to right? Are you spinning right to left? So even just the pH alone is enough to start spinning the DNA and the cells backwards, which you don't want. So that becomes actually a bit of a problem here, right? So this is the challenge that we're seeing is people are getting just totally overloaded here. So that is something that, we need to take a look at. So when you get electronic overloads, chemical overloads, stress alone changes the entire thing. You're changing what we call 0 point piece, or what you guys call center point, right? So even the emotions of what we're seeing with the Epstein and the everything else and Jacera and medbeds is creating a depletion of your entire life. And it's exhausting people. And this has to stop, because a lot of that is we need to be focusing on how to heal, how to get back into, nature, how to start spinning. You want to learn about how to sprout? I'll show you how to sprout. You want to learn about that? We'll show you what biodynamics are. You want to learn to, play with the water properly? We'll show you that. But there's a limit to what we can do with tuning forks, crystals, even ourselves. And what happens is with that voice, it basically what we're doing, it bypasses the conscious mind. And your signature can carry an entire frequency map of the entire cosmos and constellations and processionals and everything in this solar system could be accessed through the signature frequency of your map, of your voice. And so this is actually what we're doing is, let's say this is your signature up top here. And if the signature is you, and this is that tapeworm, and that's my low, iodine and everything else here, then that is basically what we're doing. So we're going to actually invert the signal. So if you're low in iodine, we're going to bring the signal to up it. If you go to, too high this, we're going to decrease this. And the idea is to bring you back to 0 point, or what you call health, homeostasis, balance. Some people call it peace. And that's actually how simple it really is. It's not that difficult. And like I said, everything's got a frequency. If we know that, then we shouldn't be scared of using sound generators to do that, because this is just listening to it with headphones. And at this point, if I need to add magnetics, because remember we're volts, amps, and resistance. If I need to add, if I should even be adding something like PEMF, like a magnetic, wave through you, like an electrical, like TENS, you can do that. But there are other things with light, and certain lights we can use as well, but they're not for everyone. There's a reason why we're supposed to stay a certain distance away from the TV. There's a difference why we use things, let's say like tuning forks, or the headphones actually act like tuning forks, you guys. So that's about it. And getting, water alkaline and all sorts of things. So these are the things that basically I just wanted to show people, because we are looking at actually each one of those chakras from an electrical magnetic point that anyone can do within minutes, because this is what we need to do. Every one of those minerals has a sound to it that I pick up. So I can tell if your minerals are high or low just because of what's happening here. So I just wanted to, let people go through that. And that's actually what I was starting to do. And when I was screen sharing here, I'm saying I can just make a sound generator here and just put in any condition and actually get the sound for it. This is a simple life code. This is like less than, I think, $200, $150 people can get, which, like I said, you can do it on payments. My gosh. But here's an example of what I'm looking like at a client, that their minerals, there's something wrong, that there's a spine or vertebrae out of Klan. And this is actually some of the new biotech. So this is how big the biofield is that I'm actually measuring on people. So we can look at your minerals and vitamins and stuff like that. And these body viewers are really cool, because what I'm combining now is looking at people through traditional Chinese medicine, through Ayurvedic, through chakras. And then what we're doing is we're putting in the right sounds. And so that is actually really fun. And this is the new fractals, maybe you haven't seen, but I'm actually through this, I can actually put in, and you can listen to the sound and the fractals at the same time. How cool is that? And if people send me their email, I can also send them something that they can take a look at, and I can send you a recording for a week. But if they send me their email to my email at Klanmother13@gmail.com, then I'm able to do that. So I'll put that in above and below there for people too. Or I'll put the link in here as well, because if they get a hold of me, they can try any one of these sound devices. And I actually have devices on here where I can actually look at it and tell you which tuning fork to get or which crystal, because I know a lot of people still like to work with natural elements with crystals and stuff. But like I said, we have the ability to, just like, when I break my bone, do I always have to go for an x-ray? No, because I actually looked on the biofeedback and I didn't need to go have an x-ray. It told me I didn't need one, right? Because I looked at the acupuncture meridians, and if something had been off, I would have gone for it, right? But this, just to give people an idea, is sometimes people are not always honest, right? And they lead you or mislead you, because some of these people wanted to talk to me and be with me, right? And one of the girls here had spent like $30,000-$40,000 to go get help because she had been injured and she couldn't figure it out, which took me less than a few minutes. And it was because she'd been sleeping and intercoursing with people that had taken the injections. And so she had a secondary acquired injection injury, right? Graphene injury, which she was now shedding. And that's what happened. I also got too close and sat too close to her in a pool, but like in a water, like we were in a tub, hot springs, but it was not that hot, but I was that close in proximity to her as she was putting off these negative, waves, right? The radiation. And I went unconscious twice. And I ended up almost seizuring and drooling, and, took probably about 5-10 minutes for me to come back. And I, went unconscious again. But like I said, when I dropped, you not just hit your butt, you hit your head, you hit this, but you break it. So I've been using like GSMO and essential oils and the biofeedback on it every day. And of course, all my favorite tuning forks, and of course, making, remedies, which what we're using is like a Tesla's coil, like a multi-wave oscillator, right? So I can put the water here and give the frequencies like a med bed and push it into the water into me. So that's why we're doing stuff like that. So anyway, those are some of the fun things I wanted to just kind of update some people on. But like, I think you're right. Like a lot of people.
Sorry. I was going to say we have a couple questions from the audience if we can. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go right ahead. If you want to take calls or questions, I'm happy to.
Okay, this one is from Jackie. She says, "Are there any kind of wait? Let me just put it up on the screen for you." She says, "Are there any essential oils that can help against demonic attack?" Jackie RC6CJ says that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's look at that. That's a great question. I am going to put, if you contact me, I can give you a free PDF where you guys can look up on it, but let me do that. Let me screen share for you so you guys can really see it. I'm going to go into a screen share here in a minute again, Rob. One of them is, okay. I was trained with Dr. Gary Young, and then I went on and trained with Dr. David Stewart, and I became an aromatherapist through the center through research and education and all that. So one of the things is that a lot of people don't realize is that when you're getting entities attacked, I was telling my clients, I want to get alkalized first. And the reason, if you're taking some baking soda water, if you're not allergic to it, or lemon baking soda water, or lemon baking soda maple syrup water is another one I like to use a lot, is that you get alkalized and then you're going to start absorbing it. Because a lot of people put essential oils on and they just evaporate, right? Kind of like our snow that doesn't melt anymore. You have to use a lighter and it still doesn't melt, it evaporates, right? So one of the things in here, I'm just going to screen share. And this is something that you can go look up. I think everything's in there. And down the States, if you want, there are suppliers called newdirections.com. And another one up here is called, in Canada, keyaromaShop.com. But get a hold of me. I'm happy to help you. This is what the biofeedback is for. I could actually take you and in less than 5 minutes know which essential oils you need, by the way. So it's not just about, is it anti-attack or what, but take a look at this essential oil reference, because you know what? All the different essential oils are in here. It's beautiful. It tells you how they work. And I want you to know that, why are we using the voice? Because it works on the 11th cranial nerve. But here, I want you to see what happens. Do you remember where you store memory, fear, trauma, and where they're trying to go after you with this 6G and all the implants and stuff? Is right up in here, right? And that right next to the pituitary and the pineal gland, that's where they want to capture. So essential oils are really great for buggering that up. And I'm going to give you a hint. Most of them are the tree oils. So it doesn't have to be just frankincense tree. It's going to be cedar tree, like cedar wood. It will be spruce, fir, pine, birch, lemon, orange, lime is one of my favorites, grapefruit. Okay, so this is where you can learn just a little bit about the basics, and you want to have like a therapeutic grade 1, organics grade 2, don't touch the rest. And you have to know the supplier, because a lot of times those suppliers, right, will say don't take it internally, and yet we do. So there are many, many ways to take those oils. And I could spend a whole show just on this alone. We use it on the skin. I use it in hydrosols. I use it in compresses. All my castor oil, you're hearing a lot of DSMO. I work with DSMO, pearl powder, all sorts of things, cold packs, compresses in the bath. Not usually the best thing. Okay. You can nebulize it, or I want you to see just actually back here in the very top corner. The one in the white that looks like a lotus flower is the nebulizer with water. Next to it is obviously incense, but the most powerful one is the one right at the corner. And that's where you actually take the bottle and you diffuse the oil itself. That's actually where you're getting it into the environment. And that gets into the biofield. I'm really big on doing raindrop or putting it on the skin. And I put it in what's called yoni pearls, but inside out. You know what the parasites don't like is aromatherapy herbal water in your enema or in your vaginal steam. So there's a lot of things that I do. I talk to doctors half the time and nurses, and they don't know what I'm talking about half the time because they're not trained in here. Very much so is things like chaste, you know, and I would say if you want to actually get rid of entities and attachments and stuff like that, start looking at the lost art of steam distillation, which is what you call yoni steams or vaginal steams, or for men, just a pelvic steam. So this has got a wealth, because I also deal with animals I don't know if you guys have got fur babies, right? But we use cats, dogs, camels. I've done bison. There's a whole section here on how to look after horses, right? So take a look at some of these. These are great because your animals are in the same environment you are, right? And most of these parasites are going back and forth, what we call like being in the zoonotic. So it was the same thing with the ostriches up here, that they put thousands of injections, foreign material. They injected with experimental stuff on these farms and the livestock right now, and they're all getting ill. So you can put it on your skin. You can put it around the ears. Don't put it down the canal. But there's a whole specialty for sexual abuse and ritual abuse, Rob, which I'm trained in. And it's using the auricular technique and Dr. Paul Noget, but Dr. Gary Young's, and I actually upped the game. So I actually can scan all this with the biofeedback. So these are the things here. And then once you get into these microorganisms that are coming through you, oils are one of the most powerful things. So anything, even oregano, thyme, those are anti-parasitical, anti-demonic, call it whatever you want. If you went back to the Essene Gospel of Peace, what did they tell you to do? They told you how to get rid of Satan. They did enemas. They did herbal enemas and aromatherapy enemas. So there's, we teach people how to do it. Like I said, you can copy it, you can use this. But what I want it to come to in the spiritual part of it is the energy centers. We have different oils combined at different megahertz, right? So peppermint is at 78 megahertz, spruce oil is at 560. So depending where the demon or the entity or whatever's harvesting you is in there, or an AI, we want to disrupt its field of communication or attachment to you. And so that's actually what we're doing. And a lot of these oils I just told you actually cross the blood-brain barrier. But this is some great stuff here, because a lot of people, when you learn to release this, because a lot of people here have been under abuse, anxiety, depression, all sorts of traumas, forgetfulness, guilt, betrayal. And then we talk all about cleansing. There's a whole section here on fatty liver, cleaning out these toxins, alkalinity, enemas, colonics, master cleansing, all sorts of stuff. Even the pH of the food. Maybe you're taking coffee and should be on mushroom coffee. Maybe you need enzymes, maybe whatever it is here. So this, and at the very back here, I'll just skip here. Any disease, A to Z, is in here. So you might want to, it's back or whatever. Like I said, entities, frequencies, parasites, all attach in different areas. So that actually might be an excellent way to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. And I think I've asked you this before, but how do we know we're getting the best kind of essential oil? Which ones are the best to buy? Can you get them off of Amazon, or where's the best place? Can you recommend where the best place to buy them would be?
Yeah, absolutely. I have done Amazon because I can read the label, right? I looked for the therapeutic scent of essential oils, and actually I sent, because actually Robert Bauer, who, actually you introduced us 2 years ago, have a friend-versary or whatever. But Robert and I have been really great friends ever since. And he was helping me out and teaching me some stuff with the computers and the AI and the tokenization. And he's an incredible musician. You should probably have an upgrade with him. What he's done is taken it to a whole different level where he's at, and doing all his shows and conversations. And he's working all with consciousness technology, which is why I love Robert Bauer. And if you haven't seen robertbauer.com, go there. But what happens is I wanted to give him a thank you gift. So I went to Amazon and I found a little kit that said therapeutic, and I sent it to him. It was in a gorgeous wood box, and I got the call, and it had been delivered to his house. So Amazon, if you read it, like I said, newdirections.com is in there. You do not have to go to companies that are paying more, and there's great quality, no doubt. Young Living doTERRA, I know them all. I knew Justin, I knew Gary, all of them. But I don't need to go pay for the education. A lot of what you're getting there is you're paying a lot of money, half the price goes into their commissions, right? As referrals for their uplines and downlines. So in Canada is Key Aroma Shop, but just look for that. And you know what? Up here, I use Nevessence, nevessence.com out of Banff. If you're anywhere in the health field, or tell me you're a friend of mine, ask them. You have to contact Tony Neves directly. Okay. So unless you go behind them, they will give you a deal as a therapist. So you may be doing Reiki. You might be doing massage, right? So Nevessence is another one. You can contact them behind the scenes. I love them because they're all secured in that height. The energy in Banff is incredible. Like it's a portal in itself. Like, you know, I live at a ley line at a sacred site here, right? I've got all the petroglyphs and stuff here. So I would suggest looking at that. And if you don't know, phone the company or take an email. I always do. I know every bloody supplier I ever deal with. When you talk about essential oils, they are liquid food, really, Rob. And you need to treat them as liquid food. They are not perfume. They are not fragrances. They are condensed herbs. So I actually have mugwort. I actually have coffee essential oil. I have chocolate raw cacao essential oil. So between that and vanilla and put it on my people, they're all having aphrodisiac. They're all having like some like, whoa, they're in love, man. You know, their hormones go balancing, right? You know, if you get back,
cool.
It is, you know, when you know how to do it, right? I used to have people fly in for a reason when I ran clinics, but I really like using this biofeedback because let's say I wanted to give you the frequency of the oil. I could take the oil, essential oils, and put them on here and tell me, like, this thing will tell me what blend to make. I just actually did one. This is actually, can I share? This is Rob's blends. So Rob has got a blend here. I actually told Rob I was going to do them ahead of time. I'm not putting anything onto it. But in here, I just did his. And it says lavender, ginger, black pepper, dill, wild orange, chamomile, jasmine, lemon balm, white fir, and sandalwood. That is the blend that Rob actually chose. Okay, so I think of this like muscle testing. And what I did is I said, I want to know which oils I should make up for Rob. And that is the sound of Rob's aromatherapy session right now. So it is now sending it to him radionically or energetically right now. So right now he's getting an aromatherapy sound bath. And I want you to think of this machine as a sound bath. It's not any different than using a crystal, a tuning fork, or anything else. I have total control over it. I make my own stuff. There's a part where you can get from the company. If you don't trust the company, who cares? Make up your own, because I know what I do. So right now it's working on Rob, giving him some aromatherapy. You know, if we wanted to do other things, we could do just herbal, or I could straighten out his spine. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I like doing basically like the homeopathic of it in sound. So I'm giving him this sound frequency, you know, the vibration of it. Does that make sense? What else you got for questions?
We had more. We had more for sure. Let me see, because I told them to put their questions in the chat. Let me see here. Okay, she says this is from Chloe Ariel, who's also been a guest on my show. I think you met, or you might have met Chloe. She might have been a part of the group podcast before. She says, does Klanmother know about blood type and tribe lineage?
Yes,
I guess.
Klanmother.
He's from Australia, so maybe I'm not sure what, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Basically in there, let me go to Facebook. I'm going to screen share again for 1 sec, because that's a great question, Chloe. I really appreciate that. Everything comes down to who you are, your blood type, your lineages, what they've been playing with, altering and going into that. So in my Facebook, and I'll just screen share there in a second. So I've got my YouTube. I talk a little bit about it. Genetics, we talked a lot about that in the DNA and Project Ascension. If you weren't here earlier, that's actually where I talked a little bit about some of this. But in here, as I go to screen share here and we go to my Facebook, there's a section in here to do with Klanmother, the great 13 matriarchs, clan mamas, white bear in here. So some of the different things, I'm just starting to put them more into a viable form for people. And a lot of stuff like with mine are really the Anastasia ringing cedars of Russia. Anastasia is Tartarian. That's Arcturian stuff. So a lot of these different people here, these were to represent, and still do, the original 13 tribes and the original 13 clans, right? Because again, people started mixing and hybridizing here. And so in some of these different areas, you would see, you know, where they started actually hybridizing people. In other words, they were seeding the farm and seeding projects. And you would see the changes in what we were looking at, what they were doing. So a lot of these lineages are trackable. They don't want to give a lot of these out. These, for example, are mine, by the way. And there are rare types, which you always assume is negative, which it's not. But there are a whole group of people, like who ever heard of like RZRZ, right? The Native Americans or
I
whatever.
have never heard of that.
Yeah. How about
Whoa.
blood group U negative? How about DI? How about JK? Caucasian KP? These are different things in there. And that individual I talked to you about, right? These are different markers and stuff like that. By the way, I don't know if I put this one in here. This is the only thing they really teach nurses and doctors and the public, which is
Can I ask you a question, Karen? Would haplogroup X be a marker? I know like Michael Hill talks about with some of the Native Americans tied to the Anunnaki. Would that be something like that? Is that what you mean? Is that something different?
we're getting to actually, Mike, it's really funny because one of the people that holds those wampum belts I was talking to you about is a Hill. And you know who he connected to? He says, oh, you got to talk to this Michael Hill. I said, I've been connected to Michael for like 10, 12 years. I don't know. Anyway, so we actually just chat and he goes, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that you're actually the Klanmother. Like you're a mama. And I said, yeah, I'm one of the wisdom knowledge keepers, right? Treaty creepers, right? You know, but anyway, and even here, I'll just show you. Here's an example. Okay. I can only bring it up so far. This is at Project Ascension, by the way. But if you go, and a lot of times they hide this, right? But I want you to see that full-blooded indigenous populations, right, were always there. And then they started doing migrations. But after the migrations, they started doing mixing with the Pleiadians, mixing with this, mixing with the Draco, mixing with this, percentages of this, right? And then what started happening is they started making all these other different blood types. Have you ever seen, there's a hard to see here, but if you go down here right where my cursor is, it says 51. I always laugh. I said it's probably like Area 51, whatever they were doing there. But they tell you how many monthly donors and that they store it and freeze it for different councils. Okay. So a lot of people, this stuff is in here. And again, they're not going to give you this stuff. I will tell you this right now. Don't go sending for it. Don't go look for it because like 23andMe, even when people have sent off stuff like their DNA, they sent things from like a frog, a kiwi, and they come up like 23% Scottish. So, you know, it's just a DNA harvesting. The best you can do at this point is get the Eldon card and check your own blood. It will give you one of the base, at least 9. But I know people that are golden or what's called RH null, which means they don't have an RH factor, positive or negative. And there's about 30 of them on the planet. Or let's say they send a certain scout group up with DNA. Or when they sent from Zelanthia, there's a great book called Atlantis Motherland. And in that, they talk about how basically similar to Cirrus, but the Zelanthians came down and started mixing with the Russian Tartarians, right? And then you have a whole new breed. But anyway, your coat of arms on your mother's sides are really important. You should really know that. That you can do. These are safe. Like I know some of mine, I've got some of the tribes of Ephraim.
Why? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Why is the coat of arms on the mother's side more important? I just got to ask you that.
Because
I'm so interested in this stuff.
You know what? This is so cool. Is that you come through your mother. Now, of course, we know they're doing in vitro fertilization. So you got to remember when you had all your tribes, right? Even the different delegations of them, is that when they started doing what's called Winrow or Rogams, they made an alien injection, we'll just say the V word, you know, and they started doing that in the 1640s. And that's when they wanted to water down and infiltrate the tribes. So that what they started doing is putting and cutting their own genetics in it. And then that became really what became, because you would, an RH negative would actually expel or abort an original tribal thing till they found a fix around that in the genetic eugenics. So once you get into that, and that's all of the genetics on Project Ascension, we've got 3-4 things just on genetics, bloodlines, putting people in with Pleiadians, how they did it, which groups are going after, how they're eliminating everyone. Now, back to your question, the mother is the most important because as much as we can trace, it's called the mtDNA or mitochondrial Eve or mtDNA lineage, is that in law, you still go by law by the mother's tribe. So my children belong to me, not to the father's tribe. And my children actually carry my blood type. They're both AB positive, right? They're got nothing to do with their father. But those fathers then would be responsible for technically looking after their children's from their sister. So they would be, as an uncle, responsible for maintaining the security and teaching them the laws. I am responsible for dispensing them to my children. And basically, my uncles should have been teaching my children, right? So when you start learning about Bear Clan, and people could go to that Tribal Laws Meredith Quinn I was showing you about, and that's where it's important. My treaties are out there. They're on stone. They're on discs. We don't need a flag. We know where they are. We know the territories. And these go back to the original hieroglyphics. As you see, oh, yeah, Horus, upper lower Egypt, upper lower, it doesn't matter, Canada, whatever. A lot of this stuff is going on with this Kemetic stuff, and it hasn't changed. You just got to know it. And so part of it, like there's one in New York, by the way. Like I said, they're in cute little languages that some of us know, but that's actually a great question. When you talk about like, why do we know that? So you need to know your blood type. And the thing, like I showed you, that was called an Eldon card, ELDON. Anyone can go into Amazon. I just looked the other day. It's $9.99 or $9, less than $10 anyway, on Amazon.com. You don't need to go to any lab. So it'll at least you get you started there, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I got another question for you. There's more questions from the audience, but what do you think about supplementing with iron to get rid of entity attachments? Like, is supplementing with iron okay?
Okay. Why would we put patches on? Okay, I'll just give you the same example. Someone went to give me some patches to try, right? You got copper patches, LifeWave patches, Vox patches, nicotine patches. Okay. Every patch I've put on, I almost basically have a heart attack. Okay. And the reason why is if you're low, maybe in copper, well, maybe that LifeWave might do something for you. But if you put it on me, I'll have a heart attack. Okay. You have RH negative, which are more different things with copper. You have iron that are RH positive people, right? It's not monkeys and bloods. I hate that stupid thing. There's nothing wrong with all of our types, but we have different things. And it's not even about eat for your blood type. That was debunked by Dr. Gabriel Cousin probably like 40 years ago, for God's sakes. And so even what we do, but when you go in, when you don't have, let's say with iron, do you know what your iron level is right now? Do you know that if
I don't.
See, and that's it. That's where I test it. I can right now in 30 seconds or less, I will tell you where your iron level is at. Okay. We just use a different scale, but right now your copper's not being broken down. The iodine, the boron, the phosphorus, and the magnesium. So let me just go to iron. Your iron is actually within normal parameters right now. So why would you go do something? What is low right now with you is zinc, like most people. Right. That's what they said with the C thing that happened in the last 6 years, right? Is all of a sudden people are losing their taste and everything because they were low, because the bugs, the parasites, certain bugs like tapeworms and stuff like that will eat different minerals. So your iron is going to usually go out for that. So what we do is we test it. If you really want, you don't want me to test it, then you can go and take your hair, or you could go to a lab and get it done. Or you can go see a naturopath. Remember, naturopaths can order virtually anything lab and blood testing that a medical doctor will do, right? So those are things that are really, really easy, So this is the type of thing that you could do this. Anyone can go use this for a week or two and know more about yourself and lab work than any hospital or doctor will know. And this is where you get into the really fun stuff in there that when I start, let's say, using my water place, I could make iron water. Why would I go out and pay money? I could make a homeopathic radionic off my machine and have an entire thing there. Even in one session, I could make it where that I have all the minerals and supplements I need for like at least a month, right? That's not going to cost me anything. So when you start seeing this, the idea is why and what is your baseline? All of a sudden people are, let's go do a switch. Let's do glutathione. You know, one of the things, and you know, I was like really, really ticked off about some of this stuff here that happened with James Rink. Most people do not know his medical history. When I first met him 15 years ago, and even 5 years ago and 10 years ago, I usually take a full, complete intake of medical history. Most people didn't. They threw tarot cards, they went to talk to him, and they gave him so much stuff that was all contraindicated, totally contraindicated. Actually, 7 of the things he was on were totally contraindicated with his conditions. And they all, as far as I'm concerned, put a bullet in him. They hastened his death, and he also was then made aware of it and still continued to do it. When you use terahertz and 3-4-1s as he was terahertzing, I watched him. I talked to him. I know right down to what happened. I know right down to the spot he died. I was talking to him. I was talking to people around him. You and he and other people have been also going to conferences, and a lot of people are injected, and it's load bearing. What they're doing is they're loading you up with, like, seriously, these negative frequencies. Sabrina Wallace, who I adore in her teaching, right? Because we're talking data. Her and I can talk back and forth, and we have a great time because we talk data. And I can appreciate that. What you call shedding or transmitting is load bearing. And she's got the computer lingo of it. I just have a different lingo, but I get the idea, and we can interface. That's why Sabrina would like me to teach all about just oils. Just keep it on that end. But if you haven't seen what's going on, everything she talks about, the wide body area network, is exactly what happened to James. And I can explain it. And yes, there are external factors, but those terahertz were like putting a direct energy weapon right into him. The methylene blue did the same thing. It doesn't come out of the system. It's not supposed to be done for those conditions. So even when you have even a slight condition, whether it be thyroid or whatever else, there were so many people that were injected with the graphene, and whether it went through the nose, the mouth, the rectum, or directly in a needle, these were the people he was still getting, and you're transfecting and you're cross-contaminating. I will show you something in here. I actually went and did live blood cell right after I got this done. So I was in the Okanagan and Kelowna back at one of our clinics with Lorraine Andrews and True Health Canada. And I actually went and got my live blood done here. I'll just show you guys here. If you are not contaminated, a lot of our clinics don't do it, but I don't know if you can see here on the screen well enough. Hold on. Okay, this is my live blood cell analysis here. Okay, so I don't know if you can see here. You see there's a blood swatch here. I went and I got my blood done. I was under the microscope, and yes, I can do the.
Trying to look. I can't. Yeah, I see. Okay, I got you.
Okay, so that's what's called dark field, and I keep my blood. You see, I don't give it away to anyone. I don't give my data or DNA away to anyone. Okay, there's the other one right below it here. Hopefully you'll see that. This is the live blood cell one at the bottom, but the dark field, we can keep it and compare it. So these are different things I went to go get done, because you know why our people went into live blood cell and dark field? It's because they all got Genius machines, because my machine was actually more accurate than their microscope. So what we do is we work with both what we can see, and the Genius will see what we can't see in the other dimensions we can't see in the other chakras or systems. And that's why when you do a lot of these things, it won't be in the blood. It could be in the muscles, the joints, the tissues, everywhere else. It could be in the biofield. Doesn't mean I'm going to pick it up in one drop of blood like they do, or a vial. So this becomes one of the issues. And so you have to be very careful who you sleep with. You know, I'm sure a lot of people don't know who maybe James was intercoursing with, right? Those are things that you have to take into consideration before you start going and giving supplements or giving this herb or giving that herb. You're not trained in it. And again, a lot of people are giving things that they've never had any training in. I mean, the only advantage, and it's not an advantage, as a nurse, and I've been nursing 42 years, is I can now help people wean from one system to the other. I can get you a replacement for that drug, or we can wean you off, or let's look at some options. But the biofeedback, you tell me what you need. I'm not guessing. Why would I do that when I could do 30,000 tests? You'll tell me exactly what you need. You will whisper to me what you need. So those are some of the things I think that are really, really important for people to bear in mind, because it's very profound in this community, you know, and that's one of the issues, is that these are not for everyone. And you may have a certain reaction now, and maybe you need a low dose and you're not at the low dose. I've had people that have done a lot of these sessions, and it's not till they've done like chemo and radiation. And that's what these are. Ethylene blue and semi-synthetics. And I don't care. It's metamaterials, as Sabrina's talked about it. Tony Pantalesco's talked about it. If you need a zeolite masterpiece education, go look at Zach at Power from the Pulse. That guy's amazing. You should have him on. Even Dorian had him on. Because we're talking about all these things here, and you know, people all of a sudden, private members charging $11,000. They're all in Acapulco right now, or wherever the hell they are, right? Dr. McKellar, they're all down there. $11,000, and you too can have some, like, you know, more drugs. These are medical people that are putting medical things back into the community, and we need to, you know, I bet you 10 different versions, Rob, of clean tobacco. I even put another one up today on my inner Facebook group, right? You could take organic Hopi tobacco leaves, put them in a little bit of either glycerin if you want, or a little bit of alcohol if you want, let it sit there, and you can start doing different things and making these at home within days or weeks. You know, it is not a hard thing. And like one of the things too, like people think, well, let's just go get some shungite. Well, shungite shouldn't be on the body. It should be around the body, but not on the body, right? Do you know what it's really doing? Do you know how that's going to interface with 6G, 7G, and 8G? That's why I like working with Tony Pantalesco. He's one of the top anti-nanotech people in the world. He was a herbologist. He's like one of the best things we ever had that left Canada, that went down to, it was in Windsor and wants to come back to up here, but he's down in Arizona now, trying to get back because he knows how dangerous and what is going on there. And one of the things we're talking about, copper, is even, yes, you can drink from a copper. I'm backing up because I'm going to ask you your questions here. The copper is great in a vessel, but so is things like mirror and glass and different things. However, just wearing a copper bracelet will stagnate the energy. There's a way to do copper braiding. It's a tree stand. It's like 369. It's like Tesla. One goes down the center. We talked about 0 point. Remember how I showed you the different graphs above and below? Well, one wraps clockwise and the other one goes counterclockwise. Okay, that's how you wear stuff.
I know my friend Rock Installo does that. He does the copper wire wrapping. You know, he knows all. Yeah. Here's what I got to ask you. This is a really good question. This is from this is one everybody probably wants to know, right? I put it up on the screen. Like, is there a way to get past sugar cravings? Which is like a real basic question, but still, right? You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Sugar cravings is a great one, like any addiction, right? Get right with, the pH. I am so onto the pH stuff. Get your pH into alignment, because when you become acidic, you get more bugs. The bugs grow and they want to go, feed me, Seymour, feed me sugar. And so anyway, the idea is to do that. The other thing I like doing is enemas, and start going into getting greens and stuff like that. Getting, into whether you want to do juices, getting the essential oils in there. I don't know if that's you or me.
Someone's not calling me. I hate this when they call me on Telegram, because I don't know who
that was me on my Telegram. I'm like, who are you? I don't know. Why don't they send a message first? But anyway, in here. So yeah, getting rid of the sugar, right? He doesn't take the message, does he? Don't call. Anyway,
they do that. Yeah,
I know that happens. No, it's okay. It's not your fault. So anyway, so with sugar, let's look at some alternatives. What can we use? There's stevia, green stevia. One of the best ones I've got is from a supplier up here, and I think they send it internationally, but it's green stevia. It's not the white diluted crap stuff. It's from a place called swadehills.com. And then you can use that. It's stronger than sugar. I mean, a lot of people like to use those things. And if you still need it, that really helps. And again, the more alkaline you are, the better it is. And when you start doing things like what's called master cleanser, I don't know if you've ever tried that. Master Cleanser is amazing. It's if you like lemonade and limeade. I have my own version of it. And so it's basically a glass of water, half an organic lemon or lime. And you can put a little bit of stevia in it and put a little bit of cayenne pepper and a little bit of Celtic salt or bamboo salt or something. And then that should actually help you. You start drinking that instead of like, vitamin water and all that crap. But this is what a lot of the top athletes use. It's called Master Cleanser or the lemonade diet. Take 1 or 2 glasses of that a day, and I really think the sugar is a hard thing for people. It's really hard sometimes, even getting juicing or stuff like that you can do with more natural citrus things. But there are people that you can't give them lemon and limes. Their mouths actually burn and blister. Everyone is a chemistry experiment. And that's why I like to look at it from a biofeedback point of view. I could look at you and scan you within a few minutes and find out what are you sensitive to, what are you allergic to, and what are your better foods. So when you put things into perspective, that'll help do that. A lot of the essential oils, because it's parasitical based, everything is the guts. That's why I'm a colon hydrotherapist. I specialize in detoxing people and detoxing them. And that's why, I see Tracy put a thing here about coffee enemas. Coffee enemas have a certain use or a limited use and can also bugger things up. So I've literally had to go at like 11:30 at night with people and find out what they did is they've been doing a week of, a certain thing, and they were doing coffee enemas every day and put themselves into basically a caffeine overload, and were having tachycardia and a heart attack. So we had to go neutralize all that. But like I said, you can do herbs, you can do oils, you can do all sorts of stuff like peri-steam hydrotherapy. I'm big on doing enemas because, like I said, that is half of it to get rid of your sugar cravings. You need to drown out. There's a reason why they're hiding in the tissues, in the biofilm, in the diverticuli, in these little pockets. They can hide anywhere in there. So those are one of the things, that might be helpful for you. And so that is something that might be very cool. And one of the things too, like I said, a lot of this is imprinted. It's what we see. When I started getting into nutrition and started learning a little bit of David Wolfe and superfoods, and I would rather go to superfoods. I learned how to be a raw food chef, with basically the top, like how to make goji berries. I can make salad dressings. I can make raw chocolate, like for breakfast puddings and things like that, because it's a fruit, doing the right foods in the right way. I mean, I could give you chocolate in the way that I make it and you'll get over your sugar cravings, right? It seems counterintuitive, but it's the way you know how to do things. So when you learn about raw foods and superfoods and holistic nutrition and keeping your nutrition intact and not cooking over 105 degrees Fahrenheit, you might get a little healthier. Most of this is because people are taking processed foods, anything out of a can or a box. Or let's say, do you get things in the store from GMO stickers number 9? All of a sudden, all the GMO, like the organic stickers are number 9. Everything else is garbage. You have to be able to read labels on food and anything like that, because it's huge. People just don't realize that how important this is, So as I said, there's so many cool things we could be doing here. And you can look up, I'm looking at Linda's thing. What she said is what essential oils are harmful to cats. I just gave you the book to go look at it, but you can also see and Google raindrop essential oils or raindrop massage for dogs and cats. And you'll see veterinarians, holistic veterinarians in Calgary doing it and showing you. There is a list, and it's usually about 10 or so essential oils that you don't use. But I will tell you, that's just a guideline. I have used them on oils. Actually, one of the military, one of my friends, just an incredible, she's just so kind. She's just one of the GK. She's just amazing. And one of their dogs, it was also part wolf, was dying. And we had some with parvo. I had other ones, let's say, with chocolate. They ate like chocolate bars and chocolate bars. And what happened is that I went and used the oils, and that's all they had. They were big contraindicated, but let me tell you, the dog's still here. Okay, so there are some things that you don't have to, but in an emergency, I will do it. I've had cats and dogs, so I don't just do people. I do livestock, I do animals, I do house clearings, I do water cleansings and water blessings. I take the water that I make and restructure it to act like a homeopathic for basically like the coherence, right? For the quantum entanglement, for that water to heal. I'm here at the sacred spot to heal the water that they just damaged, right? Because they're taking out the bases here. That's why we're on fire. So as I said, it has a time and a place. It may not be for everyone. And I would not think to put this on everyone till I listened and talked to you. I saw someone in the audience said they talked about a Bexley. That is not a biofeedback machine. It's not even a Rife machine. Okay. And those are being put out. And there's a great guy called Techron Zeesh, or Zeesh, or Techron. He looks like a tech guy. He's talking about the fake Tesla beds. We're talking about the fake med beds. We are talking about the fake Rife machines, the fake Tesla wands, and all this stuff. And the Bexley goes right in there. Okay, so those are not biofeedback. They are not true Rifes, and they do not do what I'm doing. They cannot get into the body like we're doing. Remember, if you have something and you don't even if you had the code books, you're still not getting the parameters with the oscilloscopes. I'm sorry. A $25 machine or $50 machine is not going to do what these do. So that's one of the things too. Like I said, there are a lot of knockoffs, and they're just cosmetic. They're like fluff. If I want to go in and start taking things down like tumors, you have to know what kind of waves, what kind of type of waves, what intensity, what the oscillations are. And I'm sorry, your $25 machine will not do that. But, like I said, we see a lot of this stuff going on right now. And Ryan Williams was one of the very first people to start working on fast Fourier technique that they developed out of with 40 scientists out of Russia, Dr. Bill Nelson, the NASA 13, Apollo 13 groups, and at MIT. But he was one of the first people to start doing voice imprint the way we're doing it, because we're using it with this data bank. And like I said, I've invented over 4,000 alone. So I am the one that looks for what's the weird stuff, in here. So those are some of the things in there. And you have to look at, when do I apply it? When don't I? You can listen to these nicely. They are always meant to be used with headphones. And the other thing too, if you've been injected or graphinated or sleeping, or you have a pacemaker, or you're pregnant, or even if you're menstruating, you should not be hooked up with any kind of electrical magnetics. The same thing you were injected is the same thing as a pacemaker. And like I said, a lot of people are doing these at these expos, and they're not. That's why we have only a few universities in the world. One of them is the Integrative Medical University, where we use these with Dr. Paul Duran. So we actually put out medical doctors, PhDs, masters, voice, bioresonance people, properly and trained. And there's only, like I said, I think one or two in there. So it makes kind of a difference in there. And I think that's where we need to start looking at, what is the level of criteria, and get some of this stuff back into basics here. Because like I said, a lot of people are just taking things willy-nilly, and they're not looking at the side effects, or possibly what you could be doing with side effects to someone. And James Rank and even Renetta, I know lots of stuff behind the background, which I'm not getting into, but these are part of the things that we'll say is a contributing factor that hasten their demise off the planet. And it doesn't matter what your intentions are. We can ask any nurse and medical doctor that injected people. These are war crimes, and they should be charged as such. So I have a real big problem with that. It's really hard to sit back and see that. And, one of the things, Rob, I remember probably about 2 months, I was maybe 3 months before James's conference and stuff, and I was going through some of this stuff, and he said, do you realize that's all my sponsors? Like, that's how I make my money, is on these MLMs. And I said, you're not even supposed to be on it. Like, it's contraindicated, that drug. And a lot of these are sold over the counter as multi-level marketing. But in fact, they're actually semi-synthetic, which means they're artificial, guys. And so those are some of the things. So right now, a lot of people look at iodine. Maybe you don't need iodine, and maybe you can't assimilate it. And there's how many forms of iodine? There's iodine, there's iodide. Maybe you need a better form of apopectin. Maybe you want to look at rhodiola. Maybe you need to look at some other stuff, and maybe you don't need that. And maybe we need to test your thyroid to see what the thyroid's doing before people start assuming you need radiation, and this will be the answer, because there's a lot of other answers first. And maybe a lot of it is to get out of the environment that's causing it. If you're living next to, like in an apartment next to a cell phone tower within 30 miles of you, we got a problem. And maybe we should start looking at these, like you said, what are some of the things? Maybe we should start looking at these eco villages. And there's an idea. I gave that to Dr. Ram. I said, if you need to go no Sparkan, then look at the eco, right? We all think we want to start one up, or think we're going to get, some like lottery.
Yeah, I love Doc Ram, by the way. I think he's such a treasure to have in the community. You know what I mean? Like, and the fact that he's still around, is like, it's really amazing. Like he's I really enjoy having him around. He's a really cool dude.
Yeah, with the wealth of experience, but where his actual experience lies for you guys is in his agriculture and in doing like what would be permaculture and stuff like that. Like, we've got people in here with mushrooms and stuff like that. Like, where are your polypores? Where's your lion's mane? You could be making those at home, by the way, growing them in your own little box, or going out into the environment around you and plugging them, right? And making the plugs for those mushrooms and stuff like that. So that is really a great way to go. And so in that, exploring the raw, I know you think I had a reading from you, but I really didn't. But I've known of you for a long time. Seriously, I love exploring with Ra. But yeah, anyway, but yeah, that's one of the things in here. So I appreciate it. I had a great level for that. So yeah, those are some of the things in here. Many different things, are out there. But you start looking at a lot of these things like, and I'm just gonna go back to even sugar for something. There's like birch sugar, there's maple sugar. A lot of those are still healthy, right? We can give to people, they don't realize. And they're not going to be contraindicated for cancers and stuff like that. But a lot of these erythritols and monk fruit, where does it come in white crystals in nature? It's like when they sell stevia, right? And I'm like, white stevia? Serious? It's a little plant that looks like peppermint, basically, right? And I'm like, they're feeding you back there. So you got to know and get it back to the natural state of affairs as much as you can here. And so that's one of the, coolest things in here, right? And
what I found in my grocery store, I was looking for natural stevia, and a lot of the stevia I found was mixed with dextrose, which I was like, oh my god! I was like, what's the whole point of buying stevia? It's mixed with dextrose, and all this other shit, like erythritol and shit. It's like, this is insanity.
It is, and like you start looking at this stuff, right? You see the potential of like clove essential oil, right? Which has got an ORAC scale of, which is on antioxidant sort of thing, but the oxidant reduction potential here. But what happens in that capacity is that basically it's one of the highest things in the world. It's got per ounce, it's like 1 million, like cacao is up there at 1,000, but you start looking at carrots, they're like 200, like who cares? So when you start going into things like cloves or stuff like that, we actually, when I talked about nicotine, like I said, you can make Hopi tobacco tinctures. You can actually grind them up. I could use them as like different things, like patches. I would make my own patch. There is actually, if you go onto my Facebook, I've got some different suppliers, and they're actually herbal patches, not nicotine, not Nicorette that artist is showing, but we actually have natural herbal patches that you can do or you can buy. And they're actually combined with things like cloves or peppermint and stuff like that. So I think that's the way to go. But you can certainly make your own, or, like I said, people don't know with women. I was just showing my last client is that we actually do something called a yoni pearl. And most people have never, ever seen that. Women did parasite cleansing and getting rid of demons, by the way. They made yoni pearls and they actually put them in the vagina. And they actually did their parasite cleansing for 3 months, 2 to 3 months, with actually herbs crushed up and put into the vagina. We could also then mix them or melt them down with different things when I'm making a like butt balm, but also vaginal or rectal suppositories. And I'll just show you that because I think maybe a lot of your audience hasn't seen it. Like I said, I can talk to a lot of doctors. They don't know what I'm talking about half the time either. And that's okay. This is original medicine. I've gone to the school of Steamy Chick and I've gone to the school of Red Tent Wellness. There's 2-1 right there. Now, in here, if I wanted to look at something called a yoni pearl, right? How many women know about this? Yeah, add that in now. Yoni pearls are the original way to do, women did parasite cleansing and got rid of what they called demons, okay? Demonic possession, right?
Mhm.
And it didn't matter. It's not about having yeast. It's not about having a smell. They did this routinely, just like they used to do, as I talked about, parasite cleanses every season change 3-4 times a year. Women would do this in the red tent. They'd meet with their sisters, and they're basically like a little herbal tea bag. There's one up there. And so you would take the different herbs, and I make my own. I'm not paying them, but you can get them online. And you want to make sure they're natural and organic. But basically, you can take any herb, grind it up. I've actually been on the road, right? Like camping, or when I've been with people, I don't always have the supplies with me. I've actually taken an organic tea bag, opened the tea bag up, and I put it into natural fabric, put a string, and made her basically herbal and vaginal, like basically a detox pearl is what we call them. And so that's like a detox tampon. You grease them up well, and you put them in there for 3 days. And every 3 days, except when they're menstruating, you would do this. This is the number one thing I would do for what happened for injury in the last 6 years. Anything like this, radiation, is you secure the root chakra first. And the things I will tell you I have seen come out, I have seen people that had tattoos, and you know all the colors a lot of people put in tattoos, like the bright blues, bright greens, and whatever, right? Reds. I've seen that come out their vagina, guys. I have seen actual blue blood myself from real original people that have a real progenitor blood. That's what I'm saying. But I've also seen women start pulling off because they were in gross pain. And that's why a lot of people were using psychedelics or Phoenix tears or other different things to numb them because they weren't learning basics here. So that is actually done in sticks, gels, and suppositories, and you can look up your own and see what kind of stuff is being used. Russians use it, Chinese use it. And so one of the things too, like I said, is even doing the steam chairs. This is for men and women, by the way. This is not just, for a gender. Okay, so we actually can have what's called steam chairs or yoni steams, and you can build chairs or stools or whatever you want here, like a sitz bath, but you're actually doing frequency baths. You can buy them or make them or use little hot plates like I do. There's one on Alibaba for $4,000. We have gold ones and all sorts of stuff. Actually, with crystals, we actually make organite crystal chairs. People don't realize it. For men and women, this is the number one thing for cancer. It's the number one thing for radiation. It's another one thing for demons. Cleaning out your biofield inside and out, guys. This, you can use crystals, and like with Ra, you could use all the sacred geometry he talks about, and the copper. You can use lots of things in these, and you sit on these steamers. They're absolutely amazing for men and women. I've saved a few marriages actually doing this. We had the men and the women using them side by side at night, and they play crib and backgammon. And these are like natural aphrodisiacs, Rob. Natural aphrodisiacs. So it actually
Really?
brought number one thing. And so I had a lot of couples actually fall back in love. And for men especially, when you do enemas and you do things like this or colonics and stuff with men, you get a better erection. You do not have things like prostate cancer coming at you from the leaky gut, going into the root chakra, the parasites. All those things are absolutely amazing. And like no premature ejaculation, right? I have a lot of guys when
it sounds pretty amazing. Like it sounds like, it sounds like a miracle, like a miracle cure almost, it sounds like what a lot of people need.
It is a miracle, but you got to know what it is. And so I can play with the biofeedback, and it will tell me the herbs and the oils that we need. It will show me how to do it, the frequencies. Like I can take a frequency right now. I can go right into the prostate if I want and just put prostate and run you the frequencies for your prostates, for crap's sakes, like a Rife machine. That's the thing, is that we have all these books already in here. I have every bloody code that you can find in almost every bloody thing, and I make it, So yeah, there are things, everyone's been targeted in here, and there are certain people in there, but you also have people that are cloned. They've been taken out. But when you do it to yourself, half of it is, yes, there is towers out here, and there's 6G and satellites and stuff like that. And Sabrina's totally correct. And Mark Steele, when I talked to him, we wanted to do a show that was coming up. But the thing is that when you're putting those substances in there, you're weakening your system that allows them an opening to come in. And that's the key. You know, when you want to maintain things as a tribe, then that's how you maintain being a sovereign. When you allow different semi-synthetics and artificial things, you are no longer tribal. You are no longer authentic. You are no longer a sovereign, technically. And the law has even said that. And they have now come to say that you take all these modified foods, drugs, and everything else into you, and you modify your DNA, the mitochondrial DNA in the cell, they call you a homo, right? Cyborg genesis. And you're no longer, they're not sovereigns, they're not tribes, they're not grandmothers, they're not clanmothers, they're not anything. And that applies to the men, right? And that becomes an issue. So those are some of the things in here. So like I said, I can go into any organ, any system, and find a frequency and stuff like that. And the thing is that we are trying to do what we can. There are very few of us left. There's only a handful of us left at this level. And one of the ones I'm working with is the Choctaw Nations, right? Like some of their hereditary things. I should show you guys, but back here in that letter up there, that little brown thing above me here on my head is basically a feather that came from all the chiefs down east. So that's wrapped up. That's an eagle's feather from the Six Nations chiefs, right? That's like giving you the crown jewels. But to me, the chiefs have sent that ahead of time with gifts so that I know that they're behind me. Okay, so it doesn't matter what the color is, you know, whether it was white calf, buffalo woman, or it's me out here, you've got to hold those original customs, usages, and laws and do the best you can. And then that's where I want to get these people actually arrested for, and which we are, we've put in for the acts of war, right? We started with Queen Elizabeth back, you know, several years ago. So that was the beginning. That is their thing to do. That's their, you know, cleaning up the storm and cleaning up being the storm and the storm keepers and the peacekeepers and taking it out, because we need galactic help here. And it is a tribal national security operation, right? And nothing is going online, nothing. But, you know, I feel for people. I mean, I was in an area that was all burnt up here, right? You know, now I see all my friends and stuff like that are hurt because they didn't leave the area. And now they're suffering a year later from all the lead poisoning, aluminum, the stuff that they dropped, the stuff that created it, the accelerants, the retardants, the, you know, constant burning and direct energy weapons to keep that fire going, right? I still have trees. Now they're clear cutting everything. Now we're probably going to be looking at avalanches and mudslides all over, you know, yeah. So, you know, like I said, it's pre-planned. They're so far ahead, but you can only do what you want to do. And you got to keep your vibration up. And whether you get the tools and stuff like that, you know, whether it's tuning forks or go find some people online. You know, I just found some incredible people that are doing some amazing crystal bowl work that are teaching this going back to basically the periods, you know, and the pyramids and stuff like that. They hold that, you know, original knowledge. It's so amazing here. So that is what we have. But anyway, you know, when you start looking at that, a lot of people, like I said, I think they've been so co-opted over the years too, right? And I've known a lot of these things. I know Dorian at DeBoom has been exposing a lot of these grifters, right? I know they're not the same people. I know they're not the same voices. I've actually seen them. And unfortunately, they do recycling. But we can only, it doesn't matter what these people, these podcasters are doing. It matters that you're in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, right? I think we get too involved in media. Do I really care what Trump's doing? Do I really care what, you know, Nino's doing? Do I really care what do all these things that we're putting people on podcasts and pedestals like they're the authority? The only authority in your life is between you and the creator, and you need to get that back into alignment. You know, they don't have the information. They don't. None of them do.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you know people that have some of the highest security clearance, they don't have the thing in here. And so this is one of the things I think people need to look at, is that they need to get themselves into the right position. Like right now, I was like, this is a great thing. I'm at the, you know, cleanest lake, cleanest area, cleanest whatever. You know, 1 second later, it's on fire, which is, you know, that they're taking out what they're taking out here. And I know this is a sacred site. I've got all the Hopi Mayan prophecy petroglyphs here. I know what it says. I decoded it. That's why Renetta and I were hanging out. I was doing, biofeedback and stuff like that. We were about to start doing things for the matriarchs, by the way.
Wow.
There's a lot of things, in there that, people weren't aware of, I've still got the tape I kept from her because there are very few of us that can decode the petroglyphs that were here. And I'll just tell you, the local natives can't tell you. We know what it is. But, that's unfortunate, right? So hopefully that'll start coming around. But hopefully, and I think it is like things like what you're doing. You're bringing information to the forefront, right? You're doing what we can with that. But I think we need, a lot of us need help. And we need to do this as a community. I think one of the best things I ever heard, I remember when I was still in Saskatoon by the University of Saskatchewan in the medicine wheel there. And there was a professor there. It was very interesting. It was First Nations. It was Cree from the Nihilwaks up there. And what he talked about is there was a guy that had a drinking problem, just as an example. So it could be any, like you said, addiction, sugar, drugs, coffee, whatever, maybe, whatever it might be. So we'll just say someone had an addiction problem there. And the wife didn't know she had a certain thing. Well, it's not doing this, not doing that. The doctor didn't know. The friends didn't know. The brother didn't know. The children. Well, everyone had a piece of the puzzle. And you know who actually solved the puzzle for all of them? When they sat in the healing circle. You'll never guess. It was the garbage man. Now, why would the garbage man be able to fix this guy's addiction? And you know what the reason was?
What was that?
Because from everyone else, he was hiding and drinking the bottles. But the one thing he didn't do is he still put him in. He would go out the morning of the garbage pickup and he would hide the bottles. And then the garbage man started, realizing clink, 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 that he actually realized when and how much and what the actual problem was. So it wasn't until they brought the garbage man into the community multidisciplinary healing circle that they figured out this was the problem.
Wow.
So there's just a cute example of it takes a community to heal the community, right? And sometimes it's not always stuff that we want to look at in the mirror or confront, but this is some of the stuff I think is the most helpful to people. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've been going about 2 hours and 20 minutes almost.
Wow.
I can't believe time went so fast. I mean, but this is amazing, Karen. Do you want to tell people how they can follow you and stuff? And this was awesome. And my computer died out when we were talking. I mean, it not died, it's not, I don't know what's going on. It's not, I had to get on my phone. I'm on my phone now,
Yeah, electronics are kind of being a little weird. I'm just going to screen share for 1 second. I'll just show you where they can.
All right, I know how to add it on my phone, I think. Let me see. Okay, I got you.
Okay, so.
Is it adding? Or wait, add to stage. There we go. Okay.
Okay. I am on Facebook for a while. Some of them are kind of locked down. And right now, despite me having no restrictions, they have restricted me in the sense I can only talk to 4 people a day. Isn't that wonderful? I can only add a couple. Facebook has done me actually a really positive. They've sent me over 7,000 people this month.
Wow, that's amazing.
Okay. I'm being recommended. Somehow the algorithm likes what I'm saying. Who knows what has happened to AI or who's getting in or who's not. But anyway, it's been a positive thing for me. On here, you can see Klanmother13@gmail. That's with the K, please. Otherwise, Linda. There is another Klanmother with a C, but that's Linda. She's not me. And as much as I love her, but KLAN mother13@gmail. Okay. If you go below here, there are links. Those links here will actually take you to some of the trials. And if you want to try this new thing called a QuantiCap, which is just absolutely bloody amazing, I am so excited about this QuantiCap, is if you want to have a remote opportunity with me, you can send this, and this QuantiCap, I will send you basically a link. And the QuantiCap, you will put your voice and picture in, and I will do a mini session and you get to listen to it. And forever and ever, you will always have all the 15 tones of the chakras and the solfeggio tones. But I can do an actual custom session for someone and send it anywhere, anytime, however you would like it. So this is something that we're now doing is remote biofeedback, which I've been doing, by the way, for 15, 20 years. It's not new to me. But this is what we call the quantum capsule. So it's a little bit different. It's a different app you can get in. And if you send me stuff ahead of time, I can get you that free. But if you wanted to go into this, as I said, you can go in and try. There's a 2 free week that you can use anywhere. And AI is not AI. If I get one more thing, it's an basically artifact intelligence analysis report. Okay, so we're not Chat GPT. I'm going to make that in here. So basically, you would put your voice in, and then within 15 seconds, you'll find out what your aura looks like, and it will tell you everything, highs and lows, and the minerals, the vitamins, and then you send the frequencies, and there's Ryan. So you get to try that if you want, if that's something you want. I'm also on Twitter and X and LinkedIn and all those fun things too here. You will see me putting on quite a bit of different information and stuff out here. So if it's something that you want to talk to me on, a lot of stuff, and I will just say there is a lockdown of information in Canada, Rob, that we cannot put out probably, I'd say 30, 40% of what you put down in the States. So when I go into here, I have to actually literally go into whatever's on my profile here. Okay, like what happened, I have to cut and paste it and put it onto Facebook to get the information to people. Okay, so I put a lot of information there. There's some of the stuff here. And then I will put corrections as I see and deem fit. So one of the things I also have here is my own data group. And this is where actually Facebook has given me an extra 6,000 people this month. So those are different things that you'll see in here too. So I have my own inner circle. So there's probably about, 40, 60,000 people between that. And then I'm on Telegram and Discord still with Tony for, I don't know how long that's going to be, because they're going to try knocking things off. But the only thing I'm not on is in WhatsApp. So, but anyway, so that's one of the best ways to get a hold of me, is I try and monitor that. And I will be off grid for the first 2 weeks, probably in March. I won't be online because we're going to an off grid place to start setting up, so that I will be working with solar panel and stuff like that, so that I don't need to be on the grid. Okay. Wow. So those are some of the things that might be helpful that people need to think of. It's one thing to do it, but if not, you're going to need a group of people that are like-minded with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those are the things start off, because I think in what I've been seeing with, we've seen enough weird stuff. I love like Stephen Walker stuff at JWTV. If you haven't seen him, he's got some amazing stuff like Mr. MB3, Michael Bradbury and stuff. And some of the other people, there are so many things being shown. And right now, especially like when you talked about just the assault on our psyche, I mean, half the stuff is CGI and AI that you can't tell. So all you can deal with is hopefully the people right in your community, So hopefully that's been helpful, I think, for a lot of people today. And I've thoroughly enjoyed myself and talking to you and answering the questions. It's actually kind of fun, doing that. And hopefully people have learned quite a bit here, because we need to have these kind of group tanks. Like I said, a lot of people did a lot of things to a lot of people here, and I knew they were hurtful and harmful. And again, people don't realize you have an accumulative amount. You can get away with it maybe for a couple of weeks or a couple months, but at some point, like chemo and radiation, how many sessions does it need for someone to lose their hair and like burn out their third eye and lose their 5th, 6th, and 7th chakra, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has that. So yeah, in question, I do have my own Telegram. You can take a look at that as well.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. And I'm Typical Skeptic Podcast. You can find me on everywhere: YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, X, all that stuff. And thank you so much, Karen. And I will see you guys tomorrow. And thanks, Karen. And have a good night, everybody. They wanted me to do a call-in show tonight. I don't know if I'm going to do that tonight, guys. I'm not sure. But tomorrow for sure, call-in show. And yeah. And thank you guys. Good night, guys.